This conference will now be recorded.
It is Thursday, July the 8th, 6:30 p.m. and our regular meeting of the Rhome City Council will begin. It is via telephone conference. And notice is hereby given that in accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor, most recently extended through August. Did we lose everybody? Maybe not. On Thursday, July the 8th, that we can go into this conference to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, to slow the spread of the virus. The meeting is closed to in-person attendance by the public. And before we move on, I would like to say this before we get to citizen participation. Everybody's participation is really appreciated. However, I would like to remind everyone, including the council and staff, that this meeting will be with decorum and respect for all. We have many items to discuss, and that we ask that when we move into the regular meeting, that input from council members reflect the agenda topic. I will not tolerate any interruptions from the public, and also ask that the council members respect each other and do not interrupt when others are speaking. Should our meeting become too long, the agenda items that have not been addressed will be moved to the next meeting. Okay, Shannon, you are on for public speaking.
Thank you, ma'am. First up is Candace Fitch. Miss Fitch, when you're ready, please.
Hi, my name is Candy Fitch, and I live at 155 School Road. We moved to Rhome in 2012 in the Shell Creek Edition while looking for a forever home. My husband, as you guys know, is the fire chief. He's a firefighter, but he's a retired career firefighter with over 25 years of experience. He's a paramedic, field training officer, and he's also part of the CISM team, which counsels first responders on duties, deaths, and children. On July 4th, while vacationing, our son decided to join Rhome, and he was so excited about it. It was like July 4th, and we were in Minnesota, and it was so cool. Having that, we are so dedicated to Rhome and seeing Rhome grow. But we noticed when Corbin started working that he would say things, and Daryl would say, "Are you not training on that?" Or, "What did you guys do on training on that Monday?" And we found that there was a lot of discrepancies. And the one that hit me the most was there was a woman that was injured on 114. She's a teacher for Northwest High School. And she was trapped. And it took hours and hours and hours for her to get out because of they had to call Justin. And because of that, she could have died. And that freaked me out. I mean, I was devastated to think that we're living in a town where 114 and 287 cross, and there's not a firefighter that can do the jaws of life. So I asked my husband at the time he was working at North Hills if he would go up and train on Mondays, like once a month or something. He started training with them, and I'm telling you, I'm so proud of him. He left an $80,000 job, 9 paid holidays, 4 weeks of paid vacation, and I think he had over 1,500 hours of community for sick time that he had. He went to being captain, and as soon as we started looking for a house, we found this house next to the old school. And what exciting! Who wouldn't want to live next door to the fire station? I mean, our whole life is fire department. The kids have grown up with the fire department. 9/11 happened. There's just that camaraderie. I was so proud of him. And I just feel like if the schools doesn't get passed, that we're just going back and doing the same thing that we've done over and over again. You have 9 EMTs, 7 paramedics that are on the Rhome roster. I don't know if you guys understand.
I'm sorry, ma'am, your time is up.
Thank you.
Next up is Tommy Eason. Miss Eason, when you're ready, please.
Good evening to all. My name is Tommy Eason and I live at 1107 Mount Lane. I have 2 things that I would like to discuss. First, 2 weeks ago, our mayor did something procedurally wrong. She let one person speak out in the meeting without stopping them, but for another citizen that wanted to say something, the mayor immediately shut her down. This is prejudicial and not what the mayor campaigned on. The mayor said, and I quote, "I want to hear from all the citizens." The mayor demonstrated that she just campaigned for votes. The mayor demonstrated she also wants to hear positions that she supports as the mayor, and a mayor should be neutral. Second, I am so glad to see that on the agenda about the changes of the citizen presentation. Don't you think it should have been on the agenda before making the changes on the fly 2 weeks ago? I wanted to read a presentation to the citizens of this town from another citizen, but the rules had suddenly changed. I remember a few times our mayor, prior to her election, reading a presentation of her daughters and one from herself. Again, this is prejudicial and biased. You were not elected to show favoritism on issues. In my humble opinion, you should have gone to the council to discuss the changes before you made them on your own. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor, that is all I have for presentations tonight.
Okay, and we're moving right along now. We're going to council and mayor announcements. Council guys, do you have anything? Ashley? Ashley, go ahead.
I'll let Sam go in front of me.
Okay, I couldn't, Sam, I missed your hand again and I apologize.
No, please, Ashley, go ahead. She called on you first.
Oh, I'm still writing mine out from Candace, so please go ahead.
Well, you don't get to respond to Candace.
Go ahead.
Sam, go ahead with your.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I want to say bravo to everyone involved in receiving the furniture from TCU. It clearly required a quick response, quick organization, and oh my, the police and fire departments have exceeded all expectations. Well done, everyone. Well done.
Okay, Ashley.
I would just a couple of things. If everyone could check on the Rhome Community Library for their upcoming events for their golf tournament. Also, thank you for Candace. Sorry, I don't know if it's happening. Sorry, 1 second.
Ashley, there you go.
Sorry, never happened before. Thank you to Candace for speaking up for Daryl. Also, just want to say to our city administrator and staff, I was elected to make decisions and vote for the citizens of Rhome, and time again, we're getting reports and items at the 5th hour. So just want to make it known. So, but thank you for everything. So let's have a great meeting.
Okay. Shannon, we got anybody else?
It doesn't look like anybody else has raised their hand.
Okay. I would like, as mayor, to ask for our police chief to give us an update on the officer that was shot. I know we all care.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Officer Rex Ritchie, as you all know, was shot and injured in the line of duty serving our citizens and the citizens of Wise County. I'm happy to report that he is doing well. He's not back to full strength, and he won't be for probably another couple months. But he's doing great. He really appreciates the outpouring of support from the citizens because they've gone well above what we thought would happen, and the city has stood by him. Uh, and we're happy that that happened as well. And he should be back to full duty, hopefully in about 2 months. So that's where he's at, and I have visited him with him on several occasions, and he's doing well.
We appreciate that. We're all wishing him the best.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
we'll move on to the consent agenda, which has one item, the minutes of the city council meeting of June the 24th. Do I hear a motion we accept that, or does someone want to change something? Okay, do I hear a motion that we accept the consent agenda and the minutes?
I make a motion, we accept.
Okay, and Elaine is seconding it. Okay, Shannon, let's vote.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem McCabe?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Ty? Thank you. Councilmember Priest?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
We're moving on to the monthly staff reports and board meetings. Does anyone want to pull any of that off? So we want to accept the consent agenda as presented. Am I correct?
Mayor, there's no
And
action
the
taken.
And the monthly staff reports and board minutes. I'm sorry, Shannon.
There's no action on these items. They're just for update and discussion.
Right, and nobody has a discussion. So then we're going to move on to a regular agenda item, new business. This is a topic that we don't ever want to hear about, but Cynthia is going to present the proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22. And she's got some aids with it and everything.
Thank you, Mayor. Sharing my screen here, you guys have the proposed budget in that was sent out to you, as well as a budget letter that was sent to you in the agenda commentary that went out on that. So a couple of items that I'd really like to hone in on first is just to make sure that you all understand that this is the proposed budget based on preliminary values. So we got those preliminary values back in April, and we will get the final certified values July 26th. So as a review, in March, we had a workshop and really explored the council priorities and received information from you, giving you information from the department heads. And what staff heard was that council wanted to maintain conservative levels of spending, alignment, you wanted alignment with the comprehensive development plan goals that had been identified. And you want investment into critical infrastructure needs, focus on health and safety, a focus on the next stage of the prior planning that council has done over the last couple of years. And in the council workshop, we reviewed the department head budget needs and requests, and you all gave some direction to city staff so that we could go back and compile this budget for you. Just as a reminder, the vision of Rhome, and I think you all know it probably by heart, but just in case you don't, I will read it. And this is a vision statement that is in the comprehensive development plan. And it's to be a safe, friendly community, proud of its attractive small town character, and actively seeking to serve people of all ages, backgrounds, and economic means with a responsive, transparent governance. The City of Rome will offer a wide variety of quality commercial and retail services, as well as a variety of inviting parks, trails, and community gathering spaces, together making Rome a wonderful place to live, work, and play. So again, in April, we received the preliminary tax values from the appraisal district. As a review in 2021, the certified total taxable value was 168,284,991. And right now, the preliminary total taxable value is standing at about 173,254,967. I've got this graph here that gives you a brief history. All of these are certified except for this year, which is obviously the preliminary value. So I think what this chart shows is that there was a lot of growth that happened between 2018-19 and 2019-2020. And then, you know, the growth between when COVID hit in 2020 and March of 2020, it was relatively flat. And so now we do see some modest growth, and that is to the tune of about $4.8 million. The summary of included council priorities in this budget is, and these are just kind of the bigger ticket items, if you will, include staff salaries and market adjustments, code compliance. And when I say code compliance, it's really focusing, we have updated ordinances, and we have included money for any substandard property abatement that may need to occur over the next year. Police, radio and tasers to the tune of 87.5, and for the fire department, the shift work, additional shift work at approximately 26,000. We also talked about the larger items that are needed, and that is the bond proposal that were authorized by the council. I guess was it 2 council meetings ago. And just as a review, those projects include the water wastewater fund, the wastewater treatment water improvements. So that is approximately $5.8 million, and this would be done through a revenue bond. As a reminder, we submitted the project information fact sheets to the Texas Water Development Board, applying for those low interest rate loans. And a revenue bond is essentially bond money that is backed by the revenue. And that is, as you all know, the water wastewater fund is an enterprise fund. The other items that council authorized were some equipment, larger equipment purchases, and that would be a backhoe, a dump truck, and a work truck, to about $244 million, and that would be done through a tax note. In the general fund, you're looking at 2 different proposals for the city facilities. One is what we're calling the city services campus, and it's essentially similar to what the municipal complex was, but it's a little bit different in that the council has authorized addressing more, instead of the facade areas, more of the code compliance issues that are going on there. The historic bank building that is included in here is to finish that out. And again, for at a cost of approximately $500 million. Again, just as a reminder, these are all costs that are estimated at this point in time. But $500 million for that project would be to finish it out as a shell, and potentially this is not an alternative to the city facility challenges that the city is facing. This is more of finishing it out for a shell, maybe an economic development area, maybe renting some space out to the Wise County Chamber or something like that. So having it there on standby. The streets that we talked about were major overhaul that will include design, drainage, and construction, and that's for Moores, Redbud, and Pecan. And then the other streets are Old Rome areas, including streets east of the railroad. In the budget itself, the council will be addressing the neighborhoods of Crown Point and Ellis in the actual Building and Development Street Fund. And then finally, the parks, and that is the Bywell Neighborhood Park. 150 was going to be seed money for applying for a grant with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, a matching grant of 150 for a neighborhood park out in Bywell, and potentially some improvements then to the family park as well.
Cynthia, excuse me, Josh has had his hand up for a while.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I can't see all of you, so if you would just interrupt me, because I'm trying to keep this on a full screen. Councilmember McCabe, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Cynthia. If you can go back a slide, I think there might have been a typo. Under the city facilities, section B, you said 500 million to do the shell for the old bank.
Oh, that's 500,000.
Okay, I thought so. I just want to make sure for clear for everybody. We're not looking for 500 million to do the old bank.
No. My apologies. Thank you for letting me see, making me aware of that. It's definitely 500,000.
Okay,
Thanks,
you.
Josh, because I had made a note also. I thought, hey, we are in trouble, so 500,000 takes the place of 5 million.
Yeah, Council Member Priest.
Elaine, there you go.
I think we have a similar mistake on the information about the backhoe and the dump truck. That says 244 million. I think it's not that.
It's not, it's 1,000. It's 1,000. I will correct that. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's what I was going to say as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Cynthia, your floor.
No, Councilmember Easton.
Thank you. You just might want to check all of your units and numbers in that column for cost, because you're actually putting, like on the very first one, 5,822,000, and then you put million. So that would come out to somewhere around $5 trillion.
I will correct all these numbers. Yeah.
I thought you might.
Yeah.
Now, we have an agenda item later to discuss, agenda item K. So we're not going to discuss the individual bonds right now, correct? We're just talking about what the numbers are that you have today for your draft budget.
Yeah, this is for the budget. And yeah, I know you have another agenda item, but this is separate. Okay, so let's see. So we're not proposing right now. I'm just showing you a graph of the staffing level, so you can see that just as a percentage. I mean, obviously, the police have 48% staffing. Public Works is at 26, and administration is 16. Municipal court is 5%, and fire department is 5%. So the staffing levels in this budget remain the same. So we're not proposing any new staff positions. As a review, Senate Bill 2 is the Texas Property Tax Reform and Transparency Act. This went into effect actually in the last budget in 2020, 2021. But just as a review, the old terminology, for those who've been in council for a while, the effective rate essentially is that benchmark tax rate that is needed to raise the same amount of revenue for operations and maintenance of the existing and the new growth. The rollback rate is limiting that tax rate increase to 8% above that effective rate before citizens could petition for a rollback. So the new terminology in Senate Bill 2 is the no new revenue rate is essentially the same as the effective rate. And based on the preliminary values, that no new revenue rate is 0.52955 per 100 valuation. The rollback rate, the new terminology is called the voter approved rate. It's similar, but the difference this time is that anything above 3.5 is not just a petition for a rollback rate, it's an automatic election to go over 3.5. And that voter approved rate is 0.499539 per 100 valuation. So, is there a hand up? Okay. So this budget is based on a proposed tax rate, again, on preliminary numbers of 0.488616 per 100 valuation, which is 0.010966 less than the voter approved rate, the rate that would require an election. So you see basically in 2021, this house here on the left, the average value of the homes here in Rome are around 250,000. And the tax rate in 2021 was 0.477694. And that meant the city tax for a homeowner would be around 1,119. Comparing that to this year, with a tax rate of 0.488616, the average value the same, the city tax would be approximately $1,221. So that's about $102 of average tax increase for homeowners.
Oh, what?
Yes. Is there a hand up? No. Okay. So this is, I think you've seen this before. This is the tax rate history for the city of Rome, going all the way back to 1993. I mean, you can see kind of the trends. I mean, through the 2000s, it remained fairly consistent, 53, 54, 53, and it kind of rose up to about 64. It looks like came down a little bit in 2004. Generally a downward trend. I mean, you see some changes over here, and then certainly since 2015, that trend has been trending down. And then last year, the year before last year, if you remember, the tax rate was about 0.44. So as a tax rate comparison with some other cities, and this is from last year, you can see where we fall. It's kind of covers the gamut. Rome is, you know, pretty much on the lower end for all of these. And part of that reason I'm going to get to in a little bit, but, you know, the councils over the years have been fairly conservative. These are some tax rate options. And again, this is all based on preliminary estimates because the calculations will change as July 26 numbers come in. We're recommending here this mid-range, which is approximately 2.29% increase. The low end would be keeping it the same as last year. Which would be, you know, a net revenue that would be raised about 15,000. With the mid rate, it'd be about 31,000. And if we went up to the voter approved rate at 4.99 at 3.5%, it'd be about 48. And remember, that's the revenue that 48 or the 31 or the 15 is the revenue that comes off of that new growth of 4.8 million. The sales tax, you guys see this on a monthly basis. Obviously, it's trending up quite a bit. And it's, you know, we've got the June figures. They were about 86. We did have in May, it was 104,000 that came in. So we're definitely trending up. For the year, if we stay on trend, even conservatively, we estimated about 888,000 for sales tax right now. With the current trends, I mean, what we have so far is looking like we'll come in closer to 930,000. So one of the things I hope that this chart shows you with the proposed budget is basically where the revenue comes from. So if you look at this pie chart, 19% of the revenue that we get comes from property tax. Sales taxes, 23%. Permits is about 3%. Fines and fees is about 13%. And contracts and grants is about 2%. And then the water wastewater fund is, you know, represents about 40%. And of course, this is an enterprise fund. One of the things I wanted to point out, and I did have a question from one of the council members, and I understand it's something I discovered, so I don't, maybe you all knew it, but I don't think so. But back in 1988, council actually took action to dedicate a half cent of the sales tax to reduce the property tax rate. And as a reminder, you know, the state, the sales tax is 8.25%. Local taxing jurisdictions can add up to 2% to that 6.25% that the state gets. Wise County actually is one of 124 out of 254 counties that actually utilizes their option to get revenue from a half-cent sales tax. So what that does is the cities within Wise County get 1.5%. And then again, 5% go to reduce the property tax rates. And you can see that here, 19% when, you know, what this chart should show you that the homeowners in Rome actually are getting are experiencing lower taxes than a lot of other cities, because if you look at their charts, the revenue for property tax, I mean, it ranges anywhere from, you know, 30 to 60% of their revenue. So that half cent does help to reduce that property tax burden on the homeowners here in the city of Rome. And then when you look at the expenses by departments, you can see where it certainly makes sense. I mean, 35% of the expenses are in that enterprise fund in the water, wastewater. Municipal court is at about 6%. Parks is about 1%. Building and development, which includes streets, is 6%. Administration is 24%. Fire department is 7%, and police department is 21%. So in looking at the water wastewater fund, again, it's an enterprise fund. We've talked a lot about this over the last several months, but the revenue should match the M&O and necessary infrastructure improvements and expansion. And the council completed their rate study. You took action to increase the wastewater rates only, and that will be effective in September 1st of 2021. You authorized a revenue bond for the water wastewater improvements that were identified in the water and wastewater master plans. And again, this is the potential funding scenario for the revenue bonds here on the water wastewater, and then the equipment vehicles for utility department. And that includes that backhoe and dump truck and the work truck. And I'm just checking to see if I see any hands, okay? All right. So, well, let me go back here. So I did give you guys the budget letter, and in that budget letter, I did, I believe I laid out some of the, and you have them in the water master plan. But some of those projects on the water wastewater side include, on the water side, the ground storage tank improvements, and the rehab on the existing steel tanks. The water well and SCADA improvements, converting the existing city water wells from free chlorine to the chloramine disinfection, the disinfection booster system, and the water well number 6, bringing that back online. And then on the wastewater side is the West Wastewater Treatment Plant and the rehab of that West Wastewater Treatment Plant to meet TCEQ violations that we've had. And then the West Wastewater Treatment Plant gravity lines, the replacement of the clay pipe that serves the West Wastewater Treatment Plant. So that's some of those specific projects that will be included in that revenue bond. And again, those were identified in the water and wastewater master plans. So the next steps in July, well, from tonight, we're going to incorporate the council direction, and in July 22nd, public input and council discussion again of the proposed budget. So you have time to look this over and provide feedback. And then in July 26th, we'll receive those certified property tax values from the appraisal district. And July 29th, we'll have a special meeting, present the proposed tax rate and proposed budget for public input, and the final proposed budget for public hearing. And we'll file that proposed budget with the city secretary and post the no new revenue and voter approved tax rates on our website by August 6th as required. And then August 26, 2021 would be required public hearing. And then September 9th is the required ordinance to adopt that final budget and required ordinance to ratify the tax rate. And that brings me to the end. I just kind of wanted to summarize some high points from the budget. And if you have any questions or discussion items, we've got our department heads here. Feel free to ask any questions.
Elaine has her go.
Outside, Councilmember Priest.
I have a couple of questions, and one of those is that I've heard some discussion that there might be something in the works about going ahead and annexing Rolling V. I thought that was, and if that's the case, then that would affect our budget this year and upcoming years. I thought that that was something that was way out in the future. So is that just a gossip item or what?
I think that's probably just a rumor, because that we're nowhere near the point where we would annex Rolling V, as you all know, and we've had discussions, but we do have a developer's agreement with Rolling V that allows us the opportunity to annex them in the future when it's beneficial. And as you all know, if you've been paying attention to the legal notices, which I know a lot of you do, you know, they have issued quite a bit of debt for all the infrastructure for their master plan community. So when that time comes that we would consider annexation, it's going to be a cost benefit analysis, how much debt they've actually paid down because any debt that they haven't paid down, the city would assume that liability. So it's definitely, 10, 15 years into the future. Now, as a reminder, there is provision in the development agreement to bring online the commercial areas only when they come online, and there's a cost sharing, basically, the revenue, there's a cost sharing for the tax revenue that would result from that commercial development. But that would not be assuming the debt of the entire Rowley V master plan at all. So it's just a cost sharing agreement for bringing commercial online. And when that comes on, and even Rolling V in their discussions, as a reminder, they, and you never know with the market. The Texas economy, even with COVID, has remained fairly strong. So it could come quicker than they think. The build out could come quicker, and they could pay down that debt quicker. But I would estimate 10 to 15 years out before annexation happens.
Okay, my second question is, I know that there's been some interest in, now that we're working to get the COVID restrictions behind us, that some of the social events that we've had in the past, and maybe we could resume some of those. Where exactly, if we were going to do something along the lines of, movie in the park, or which I thought was a lot of fun, and it was an outdoor event, so it ought to be safe as far as the COVID thing. Where does that fit into our budget if we were to try to resume any of that?
Well, that's really, as far as staff is concerned at this point, it's my understanding that council has kind of, for several reasons, put a hold on city events. I think it's something that we could discuss, and maybe it's something that I think it's appropriate for staff to kind of drive some events, but we definitely would want to accommodate that in our budgeting. When cities are looking at events through Parks and Rec, many times they provide funding for that. We just had 4th of July, and cities spend lots of money on that, and I'm talking $50,000 to $150,000 on those fireworks. So, of course, we're not there, but certainly movies in the park. I know, well, from what I've heard, they've been successful with some community donations. So, it's certainly, if staff is wanting, as council is wanting to move forward in some manner with some limited events as we kind of transition, and movies in the park make sense, then, we would need that direction from you all. And, we would come up with a plan on how we could accommodate that.
So how, to follow up on that same question, what part of the budget would that fall under? Is that a public works item? Is that an administrative item? And then I guess my next question, when you answer that, will tell me who among our staff would that responsibility fall to, I guess, is what I'm kind of leaning toward there.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be in, on the water, wastewater side from a funding perspective. It's going to be in the administration budget. I would say when they did something like this prior, we did have a part-time person. They were kind of doing like we all do now. We all do, I won't even say double duty, triple, quadruple duty. All of us wear a lot of hats. As you can see, we've had a lot of growth, and not the growth in the number of staff. So that means staff is doing more. We do have We do have some people that have event planning skill sets on board. So, but as far as funding, I would think it would, you know, typically it does come out of Parks and Rec. In that budget is on the admin side in Parks and Rec. So historically, that's where it's been. It could, you know, you could just create a restricted line item somewhere for it in the admin, but typically it does go in Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Sam's
Thank you.
got his hand up. Sam?
Thank you, Joanne. When we stopped doing the events, it wasn't that we said there would be no more city events. It was that we recognized that it was the park board that was putting on the events, and it was parks doing the events, and there was nothing in the ordinance establishing the Park and Recreation Board that said events. And we wanted the park board to focus on the improvement and the long-term durable goods that became the parks. I have no objection to events. I just don't, I mean, it's not part of Park and Rec. It's not part of their, I mean, the ordinances make no mention of it. That's not where it belongs. I mean, now to address Mrs. Priest's comment, perhaps we should, you know, assign, you know, a place for doing city events, but it is certainly not Parks and Rec. I mean, Parks and Rec, let's let them focus on the parks, not entertainment. Okay.
Right. Well, and you have that flexibility, and I would say, I mean, again, I would say that it is appropriate that it would be staff driven. You know, we want volunteers, of course, but when it comes to the budget, you all can hold us accountable. You know, fiduciary budget, you know, responsibilities. It's just cleaner and more secure to keep it on the staff side when it involves budget stuff and expending city funds, public dollars for that. And as long as it's clearly defined, it's what it's going to be. And you can go out and get donations, and cities do that all the time to supplement, you know, limited funds. And I think that that's one strategy to try to leverage, you know, the community involvement in that.
Cynthia Ashley has her hand up. You may not can see.
Sorry, Councilmember Majors.
Thank you, Elaine, for asking that. That was actually one of my questions. And that's one of the things I would campaign on, is bringing back events. So if we could bring it back and maybe putting it to staff, and then them, you know, saying if it's park board, if it's city council to help, and, you know, finding volunteers and then seeing who can help, but putting on the staff and then figuring out from there, I think. But if we could bring back events, that would be great. So Elaine, if you want to if you have any other questions, and then finish up and then bring it back.
Well, one of the things I would ask, then what I'm hearing is I need to maybe go back and put some, the pen to the paper and maybe see what a modest budget, you know, this first next year, to maybe a few movies in the park to see how that goes. Is that what I'm hearing? To add funds for that?
Yes, ma'am. That's
I
what
don't know that I would limit it to movies in the park. Leave room in case something else, you know, maybe 4th of July, we could have had a picnic. I don't know. We didn't. But,
or if it's Christmas, or if it, not just Christmas, but different events. I mean, something not just in the summer events. I mean, we could possibly play around, but something in the events. But LA or Sam, whoever. But I have some other questions about the budget whenever whoever wants to come back to me.
Okay. Sam?
Sam was first.
Okay.
Cynthia, if we're going to start addressing having more events, and putting the burden on staff, then I would suggest that you at least increase the staff level by a half person, okay? Or, you know, because I know that you all work at least 40 hours a week. I know that that just sounds silly to say that it's only 40 hours a week, but if we're going to start looking at additional tasks for staff, not only would you need to add budget for the events themselves, but for the staff to administer them. Y'all
Yes.
don't work for free, I assume.
Well, I will say we are stretched even as it is, so that would be appreciated. You know, something else is going to have to give, but yes, that would definitely be appreciated. One of the things, and you know, let me go back to staff, but I mean, Sean is here. I know that he, you know, the part-time person prior to my time here was apparently, they did double duty in parks, in public works. I mean, they were actually public works, and he has talked about an admin person, Sean has, since he's been here. So maybe that's where we put it on, you know, the staff person on the water, wastewater side to help Sean with admin duties, and that would be one of the extra hats that that person would wear. Like we all wear lots of hats. So that might be a strategy to do that. Who is that? Council member Majors or Priest?
Well, whichever. Elaine, go for it.
Well, you know, from a budgeting standpoint, I first of all, I agree with Sam. We a part-time person, maybe, you know, shared with Public Works or whatever. We work with many hats, many places. And so I think that that's a discussion for you guys to have. I do think that from a budgeting standpoint, that we do have to have a modest amount in the budget. And then hopefully we can grow that the next budget cycle that we go through. And then whatever that budget is, then staff can look at that amount and see what they can do. There's lots of things that we can think of to do, but we may not have the wherewithal to do them all this year. So I think we have to come up with the budget amount and then determine what events we would think would be the best with that amount. So it's not an unlimited number, and I don't think that we need to come up with a whole list of events and then come up with a number. I think we have to work with the budget, and then the events fall within that amount of money.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, you guys let us know what that number is that you're thinking. I'm hearing some, you know, a modest amount, and we need definition on that. And then we can go back and put pen to paper and bring some options after we've, you know, done some research on, you know, different things. So definitely we can do that, and you know, get public feedback. You know, maybe it's the Christmas or instead of the movies in the park, and give us time to, you know, really get something together and get some community involvement and get some business involvement with donations and things like that to supplement that.
Yeah, Sam's got his hand
Oh,
up.
sorry, I thought I was next.
Oh, well, either one.
Sorry, I think that the events, you know, back to if it's putting it on staff, and then staff, all it is just asking. I mean, it's one event, or if it's two events, I don't know about hiring someone part-time. I mean, it's just saying, you know, hey, can we all help? If it's donations, I mean, most businesses can donate. Maybe if it's Rolling Bean coming in, that we could go to them and say, hey, can you help us, you know, with the funds or whatnot. I mean, there's plenty of help out there, especially with the citizens. I think they would be gracious enough to come in, a couple of them, and to help. But in this parks line item, how did it jump to, let me go back my hands. How did it go for the light? Hold on, sorry. Sorry, can you mute? Talking. Sorry. Can you, on the parks budget, can you tell me how did it, for the Eternal Flame, it's $6,000 now? Hold on.
Now, that is actually the big part of the increase you see there is the water. So one of the big changes, I say big changes, it's kind of minor, but kind of big for parks, it's the biggest for parks, is what we haven't done, and most cities do, is we have internal services. And so when we use water, we should be tracking that water and we should be paying that water, even if it's to ourselves, right? Through the water, wastewater. So that's what you'll see a new line item in every department. Most times it's $500, but for parks, because we water a lot, it's a lot higher. So that is why the increase in that line item.
So is our fountain going to be fixed, if that's the case?
They are working on it. I mean, to fix the fountain is like $4,000, but right now they're working on it and they're seeing if they can't just try to fix it and make it work. So I just talked to Sean about that 2 days ago. So they're working on that. Hopefully we'll have a good report for you soon.
Okay, Sam's had his hand up before it may be asleep by now. Sam, is your hand still working?
My hand is working fine, thank you. There are a lot of things that we haven't considered, because when we do events, we almost always include the police and the fire department. So we need to make sure that we accommodate them. We can't just assume that they're going to be willing to donate the time also. But when I look at the budget and I start thinking of priorities, even though it would be nice to have events, I remember Cynthia, you didn't list it on this budget. You only listed what were the highest priority. The police department and the fire department had some additional asks that they wanted for being able to perform their duties. I don't recall what they were off the top of my head, but I tend to think that meeting the needs and providing the equipment necessary to do their jobs to the police department and fire department may be a little higher priority than events. Now, if someone, and I know Ashley talks about finding volunteers a lot. I mean, if someone wanted to volunteer to do events, the city doesn't have to sponsor it. The city doesn't have to organize it. Anyone could go sponsor their own movie in the park and rent out reserve the park and have their own movie and find their own donations. It doesn't have to be a city sponsored item. Because again, I think of priorities, and I'd much rather spend my money on the police department or fire department than on a movie in the park.
Well, so I will, you are right, Councilmember Eason, and I'll just mention a few of them. For police, we took out the vehicle leasing program. We felt like, the police department felt like they could get by going one more year and implementing that next year. But that was 52,000 because we had to cut quite a few things. And then on the fire side, their vehicle replacement apparatus program, we had to cut down by 25,000. And those are just some of the bigger ticket items that were cut in those two departments. So to your point, I see what you're saying. Again, it's council's pleasure. I think, with a nominal amount, we could probably get some, a lot of donations and hopefully a lot of volunteers. We could do that too. So it's really council's direction.
And Ashley's got her hand up.
Sam, I just want to make it known that you do not want community events. And it's we as a city that is growing that need to put on events. I mean, small towns large, that is what we are here for, the citizens, is to bring them together. So it's not for one person to go out and look for it, but you know what? That's what I campaign for, so I will do it for the citizens. So let's move on. Cynthia, another question that I have was, I go ask for it and ask for it. What
I
is the
just got called out. Do I get an opportunity to respond?
Just a minute, Sam. Ashley still got the floor.
Okay.
Cynthia, I have a question that I ask about. What is the $5,000 on the monthly various bank account? $5,000 on monthly fees for various bank accounts. I am.
Yes. So I'll answer that, but is that in the admin? Which line item are you looking at? I'll answer it, but is it the admin?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry, I got off of Parks and Event.
Okay. Yeah. So what that
Yes,
is?
ma'am. It's on the page 3 of 20.
Yeah, bank fees.
Yes, ma'am.
What that is, we have, as you know, you get them once a month, and we have 17 bank accounts. Well, they all have, the fees in the banks are going up astronomically, and council has authorized us to consolidate those, and we are actually currently working on consolidating those accounts. So that we can save money. In fact, we had a meeting just this week with the bank. The banks are really trying to get people to work virtually and not go into the branches with deposits. So for example, we make deposits every day. We've got 17 bank accounts. I mean, all of that, all those fees add up. But we are actually working to reduce those right now. And we will be consolidating those accounts that will reduce those fees as well. But those fees are going up in 2022.
And I know we do not want to have to travel for deposits, but First State Bank in Boyd says they could cut a lot of fees, but that's not in Rhome. So for what that's worth.
Well, and it's a lot of travel. I mean, that means we're short staffed anyway, we have limited staff, and that means they're out of the office going to make those deposits, a little bit farther away. And right now, we don't pay people mileage. So I know it's not very far, because it's just across the highway there, or Pinnacle Bank, most of it's Wells Fargo. But if we were going to be going to Boyd, then we'd probably have that mileage that we would have to pay employees as well. So you'd have to do an analysis. I think right now they are working with us to lower their fees, but they are going up.
Yes, Sam. Oh, I'm sorry, Ashley. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. Ashley, you called out and you said I didn't want events. I believe you're mistaken. I've said that I like the events. It's just that I want the events done in some appropriate fashion. I don't want to say that the people on the Park and Rec Board are just our event planners and these people volunteered, so now we're going to just use them up doing events instead of their doing Park and Rec Board requirements and responsibilities. I think events would be very nice. The thing is, we just have so much budget, and I tend to think of the police departments and fire department getting their requirements and getting their needs met is more important than entertainment. Again, volunteers are welcome to have all the events in this city that they wish. It doesn't have to be something that is paid for and organized by the city. If the citizens want events, they can have all the events they wish. There's nothing stopping them, and I think events are going to be a lot of fun. I just want to make sure that we get our necessary responsibilities paid for first.
And Ashley, yes, ma'am.
All right. Cynthia, I've had a couple of questions. Sorry, my hand. Insurance. just concerned. I know the cost of living's going up, but for our employees, I know that they don't get paid enough, and I'm just been looking over the insurance costs. When do the insurance is quite expensive once you figure it up for the employees. Is there anything? When do we shop around to get other bids?
Yeah, well, and I will tell you, we do have a broker that we use, and he shops around, and he works with a lot of local governments. But as you well know, and insurance has been going up for a long time, unfortunately, and it's just historically on a trend of and coverage. I mean, by and large, across the board, has been going down. Now it's for employees, we cover it 100%. Now, when it comes to families, then the employee pays a portion of that for their families, depending on the pricing that we have, the structure pricing that we have. You're exactly right, though. I mean, the cost of insurance. I mean, what we've done, we don't even have those final numbers. What we've done is we built in, an increase into this budget. Now, and it could be higher, it might be lower, but we have to wait on those final numbers. But that is an expense. But I think for the city, we do get pretty competitive rates. And we do have a pretty good benefit in that the employee is covered 100%, not their family, spouse, and children. They have to pay a portion of that.
Anybody with do we need to move on the agenda, or do y'all have anything else?
But I mean, can I just say one more thing? I mean, Councilmember Major, to your point, where maybe you were going, but I'll read into it. But that is a constant battle with the salaries that we have, because sometimes they get a raise, but then the insurance goes up, and so they're really never getting ahead. And that's why we are trying to do a little by little those market adjustments to get them more in line with the industry average across the board. All employees across the board or under market, even the median market average, according to TML salary survey. So that's why the salaries is important, and those market adjustments little by little make a difference to at least keep them ahead. And so if we're not doing that, then it could go the inverse relationship where they don't get the raise and then the insurance goes up, and that's just not a good situation to have. We are blessed in that we have a great workforce. We have dedicated employees, from our department heads to our permit technician and our police officers, and so they're all dedicated and they work hard. And I think it's important that we keep that quality workforce in place by rewarding them for their talents.
That's where I was going. So with our insurance, I saw that it went up, but when you have a family of 4, and I want our employees, our police officers make $23.75, I guess. I don't not off the top of my head, but an hour. And if they have a family of 4, and or one of our other employees makes $18 an hour. So you figure that up and what they bring home. We just need to look for the most competitive price for insurance. That's what I was just going up. And then the last but not least, we only have $120,000 in road repair. So that was my only other thing. So, but thank you.
Yeah, as a reminder, I mean, I think it's, I'm happy that council has authorized the bond for the street program, because we're going to be able to make a dent And you know, that's, I believe it's close to $4 million for that, for those projects. And for that 120, we're going to be able to address, partner with the county and address those other two areas, Crown Point and Ellis.
Anybody else? Cynthia, you've done a fine job, and I'm sorry, a busy job putting the budget together. And I'm sure as we go home, we'll think of, oh, why didn't I ask about that? Y'all know where Cynthia lives. So give her a call should you have another question, seriously. And we're going to move on now to agenda item, new business E, discussion and any necessary action regarding the extraterritorial jurisdiction exchange agreement of the city of Aurora. And Cynthia, that is you again.
Yeah, let me get my screen, share my screen. So as you know, we've been talking with Rolling V and Aurora and Newark about ETJs, and one of the, as a reminder, because I think this conversation started last year, really trying to, when you think about Rolling V Ranch as a community, a master plan community, right now they've got like 3 different jurisdictions in their master plan community. So the city of Rome has the lion's share of the ETJ, but Newark has some ETJ, Fort Worth has some ETJ, and Aurora has some ETJ. And so the goal was to try to see if on the Aurora side we could see if there was an equitable exchange of ETJ. So after lots of work all the way around and working with the city of Aurora, we have come up with a map. And let me see if I can't, hold on a second. Try to move this. Can you guys see that map? Yes or no? I can't see you.
Yes.
That's not the same map I have.
Yes, and I'm going to explain that. So I talked with the city administrator in Aurora. We had, actually, this is the first map that we came up with. Wait, here it is. Sorry. This is the first map that we came up with. So this here in the blue, the dark blue, is right here is the portion that is in the Rolling V Ranch. So something that would make sense. So that's why we came up with this area. This is what Rome would pick up. And keep in mind, for an exchange to happen, you still have to comply with state law. So it's got to be within a half mile of our city limits. Okay. So, and this is in our CCN right here as well. In this blue teal color up here, this is the first one we came to when the city administrator of Aurora and I talked. At first, you know, glance at this, she's like, well, maybe it would be better to go according to property line. And I think the first one I showed you guys, it actually had a cutout here to follow property line, because this property actually also goes over here. But in just discussions with her council members, she thought that they would be more amenable to this sort of exchange. And so that's where we're at. If this is something that you all would agree with, then, you know, we would go back and make sure that Aurora would be in agreement, and then we would go ahead and execute that agreement and make that exchange.
Michelle?
So why exactly are we doing this?
Why are we, again, because when this yellow right here is the Rolling V master plan. So when you think about these future residents and are, you know, essentially, I mean, in the way future, I mean, Rome future residents, reducing the amount of jurisdictions that have overlapping jurisdiction is really going to be beneficial for those residents. If you've been around areas where, I mean, I think of where Denton County, Dallas, and Collin County, you know, their corners meet there, and you've got 3 different counties, you've got multiple cities, you've got different school districts, and it really becomes a nightmare for the citizens that live there. And so trying to think of those future citizens in reducing those jurisdictions for them to be confused by is really kind of the impetus of this all.
Josh?
Thank you. So just looking at this real quick, a couple of thoughts that I had is, to me, this doesn't seem like a fair swap, because what they're giving up is residential area with no highway road access to anything. So the only thing that we would potentially get off of that is property tax. Where we're giving up is right on Highway 114, which is highway access, obviously, and potential sales tax. And to me, sales tax outweighs property tax, whether it's now or in the future. But not only that, this looks like it would have a huge impact on our fire district on both Rome and Newark. So have either chiefs been involved in this, and whether this would change their boundary lines or anything like that?
Well, I have not seen their boundary map. So no, I have been working with the engineers, the lawyers, and the city administrator of Aurora and Rolling V.
Is Chief Fitch here?
I think he's here.
Yes, Chief Fitch is here.
Thanks, Chief. Would this swap affect y'all's fire boundaries or fire district at all?
It could have some effect on it. It's kind of hard to see based off of the small screen I'm looking at. Being that I have not seen this before, we would have to look at it further and see how that would affect us.
Okay.
Fitch, are you on your computer or are you on a phone?
I'm actually looking on the computer, but talking on the phone.
You can go to the bottom of your screen and you can increase it. It'll say like 50 to 75 to zoom it in. There you
Yeah,
go.
that's correct. Basically what I'm leading up to is there's a lot more than just looking on a map and saying that's our jurisdiction. We would have to look at it more in detail and get a better plan on where these are laid out, other than somebody putting colors on a map.
Do we need to move this to the next meeting to give time for like fire districts and all that to be looked at? Yes,
Well,
Ashley.
but to also let you know
need to
that
hear
there's other fire chiefs involved with this too. This is not just one fire department.
Right, because you're swapping both cities, both chiefs need to be involved, but we can still discuss a little bit tonight to figure out, you know, okay, if the fire department signs off on this, are we still going to be accepting of this? So to me, I don't see that this swap would be in our favor.
And I think Josh had a very good point about the X or the basic running 114.
Councilmember Easons has had his hand up for a very long time.
Well, I can't even find him on my screen. There he is.
That's what I'm helping you with.
I do appreciate it because sometimes they blend in. Yes, Sam.
I was going to make the same comment that Mayor Pro Tem McCabe made, that it doesn't seem equitable. However, I do have some experience. My sister had the unfortunate event of she owned a home that was on a county line, it was on a city boundary, and it was on a school district boundary. All 3 went right through her property. And it was an absolute nightmare that she encountered as to where they wanted her children to go to school, et cetera, and taxes. So I appreciate that little sliver of where the blue and the yellow line overlap. And I appreciate the issues that Cynthia is trying to address. However, I am looking at the financial impact, and it just doesn't seem equitable. I mean, I'm seeing future income as 114 starts to develop more and businesses start to come out there and we continue to grow. And there's going to be a lot of sales tax right there. I don't think we want to give up that 114 fronting property.
Well, it's a valid point, and if that's the council direction, then, you know, that's the council direction. So you guys-
Ashley?
I'm sorry, messing up my screen. I make a motion that we table this. I'm not in favor for it. I honestly, I agree with Sam.
Do I hear a second that we table it? Do y'all want to go ahead and vote on this tonight, or do you want to table it?
I think we should go ahead and address it right now and give Cynthia direction as to where we'd like her to go and not table it.
Yeah, if it's dead in the water, then it's dead in the water, and I'd rather know that'd be one less thing off my plate.
So my question to you, Cynthia, is are there other options that y'all considered, or is this the only thing y'all came up with?
Well, I know Aurora is interested, and I don't know all the history, but you know, I think there's been, you know, I think they felt like they've had ETJ up there before. Again, I don't know all the history, so I think they, you know, by and large would like to see this, but you know, I was just trying to follow council direction when I first got here. Of course, it started, you know, when I first got here, and you know, we had, you know, other council members on here, and this was kind of the track we were on. But if the council's not interested, I mean, and you know that, unless you have a suggestion, I mean, I could go back and say, okay, they'd be willing to not take these frontage, but maybe come, you know, up here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Come up here and do this little bit, but not the frontage of the 114. You know, and see where they fall out. Or if it's, you know, if you guys would just don't see the benefit of pursuing it all. Whatever direction you give me, I think that direction would be desirable versus tabling.
Yeah, Josh?
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I would like to, Cynthia, I'd like to see if you can maybe sit back down with them and hash it out a little bit more. And I understand that when it comes to dealings like this, that somebody's always going to come out a little bit better than the other person. However, I think we need to have something that's a little bit more even playing field, like residential for residential, or, you know, something along those lines. It's going to be somewhat equal. But also, we do need to make sure that we involve our fire chiefs so that, you know, that doesn't mess up any of their district or the police department if they need to be involved, whatever the case may be. But I'd like to see, you know, if Aurora has some other options that maybe they want to throw out there, or maybe we can sit here and, or, you know, you and staff can sit here and look at it with chief and see what works for both sides, and maybe go back to Aurora with a counter option.
Fair enough. And let me just say, I mean, my apologies on the chief, but you know, honestly, when we first started this, I did have the assistant chief involved, so that was my oversight.
So where are we now? Okay, Sam, I'm sorry, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Cynthia, what does CCN stand for, that green dashed line? What am I looking at there at that green dashed line?
The certificate of convenience and necessity is the ability to provide water. It's our jurisdiction to provide water.
So we provide water for everything inside?
Well, here is, I'll show you the legend. So on the big picture legend.
Oh, I've got the big picture legend in front of me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So the CCN is the green line. This green line right here, this is our CCN.
And that's providing water.
Yes. That's where we're authorized to provide the water. Goes.
So, okay.
I can make it now that you know what the green is.
Thank you. Also on your map, I'm looking at the yellow line for the rolling V area. Now, there's a block cut out right there along 287, and I was under the assumption that that's definitely in our ETJ, and that was part of the rolling V. Tell me about that block cut out.
Here,
yeah, right
there. They don't know. Yeah, that's not, they don't own that.
The rolling V doesn't own that.
No.
Interesting. I thought they did. Thank you.
They're trying they're trying to obtain it, and you will see here it's yellow. So this block cut out, this purple they did. I think it's the purple they acquired. They acquired half of it. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember which half. So it's either this purple that they acquired. I'm pretty sure it's this purple, but they have not acquired this part. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Michelle, did you have a question? Okay. Anybody else? Am I missing anybody?
So we still need to decide what we want to direct Cynthia to do.
Well, what I'm hearing is you want me to get with the fire chief, let him see this map, and then get back with the city of Aurora and see if there's a different, I don't know. So let me ask you this. Would you guys consider maybe going halfway along 114 where this blue is, and maybe having a cutout that comes across here and coming down, so we maintain part of it but they get part of it? Is that potentially something that you're looking at?
Where does that feed? So the whole, you're saying not do the whole area that's shown in red on 114?
Right, that's our city limit. So up on this portion, if on this teal green, if we came in halfway, like move this teal green farther to the west, so we would maintain more of frontage on 114.
I'm thinking just leave it as it is.
Do not try to trade for ETJ, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, but that was only one person.
But I don't know who it was.
Councilmember Priest has her hand up as well.
Okay, Elaine.
I agree with Josh. I think that we get all of our players at the table, get the definitions that we need for Rhome's interests, and then I think we can come up with maybe a counter offer. But we need to have all the information that benefits our city, and I think our service departments need to be a part of that before we can even make the decision.
Councilmember Majors has her hand up first.
I was going to say, Ashley. Yes,
I'm
Ashley.
I'm agreeing with Elaine and Josh and Cynthia, I think, and adding in was Joanne in with this meeting? Was she helping negotiate this as well? Since Daryl wasn't either.
This has been ongoing, and really there hasn't been a lot of negotiation because the work that has happened over the last several months has been getting this map together. Because we spent several months getting the shape files from the city of Aurora, and really, honestly, most of that time has just been getting this map finalized.
But was Joanne, did she know anything about this prior to this meeting?
Yes, she was advised of all of the ETJ, the CCN, of all of the rolling V. However, there haven't been, the council did authorize me to negotiate this several months ago. But again, there hasn't, other than just recently, there hasn't been any meetings with the city of Aurora. There haven't been any. Most of the last several months has been creating this map.
Okay.
Okay, may I speak? Why don't we take this map or another map, like Elaine and Josh and Sam were saying, sit down and look at for real, this is point 2, this is point 3, and see where the city of Rome wants, what they want to present to Aurora for a swap. Would that work at all? And then we'd be able to go into Aurora and say, this is what we'd like to see
Yes, ma'am.
on the thing. Do I hear a motion that we reconvene and go over this map, maybe even in a special meeting?
I don't think we need a motion. We're just directing staff to take action on something that we've already approved them to do.
Okay, but if we're going to have a special meeting, do we need authorization for
Is
that?
this something that we need to have a special meeting for, or can it wait until our next regular meeting?
Cynthia, what is your deadline?
I don't think we need a special meeting. I mean, I'll get with staff, get their input, and, we'll get with Aurora, and I mean, I don't know that we need a special meeting. We can just bring it back. I mean, if we'll bring it back when we have something to bring back.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we need to just table this for the time being? What's the proper way to handle this?
Yeah, I think we just need to table this for now and then let Cynthia work on it, and she'll bring it back at the next meeting or two. When she's got more information. Just real quick, I wanted to throw in, Cynthia, maybe this might be an idea, but our spot that we're looking at giving away up there, there's that road that runs down the middle to the left-hand corner of that green box. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if we keep that bottom part of that, and then if they give us that little sliver-ish down there that covers, maybe just a hair on both sides of that rolling V line. I don't know if that would be an option that they'd look at or not, but that's just what I see off the top of my head. So, y'all want to look at it?
Yeah, you're talking about this on the top teal box. You're talking about this road right here, basically everything north and west of that road, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I understood.
Actually, I'm thinking there could be a much simpler solution. Forget the teal box. You just look at moving that ETJ to match the yellow rolling V line, because there'd be a little bit added to ours and there'd be a little bit added to theirs. The Aurora would be good. I mean, because you've got that long top arc that, okay, you move the ETJ down to match that. And so ours gets a little larger. Then you got the lower, yeah, there you go. Your cursor's, that's what I'm talking about right there. Yeah, you just move that blue teal line down to match the yellow there. Ours gets a little bit larger. And then you go to the blue teal line. Now go down a little bit. No. Forget that. Yeah, there, right there. And then just move that blue teal line over to match that rolling V curve right there. We get a little bit, they get a little bit, and it matches the line. It matches the rolling V property. Forget the teal up at the top on 114 and forget the rest of the blue. Just make it a teeny tiny thing.
I see what you're saying.
And you're saying keep 114 for Rome.
Well, just leave
If we
114 as,
do that,
yeah.
right.
Councilmember Ty has her hand up.
Sorry. Yes, Michelle.
I agree with Sam. Would that fix the whole citizens not knowing where they would go for schools and whatever they would be confused about?
I think so.
Right, what we're looking at here, wherever we move the colored lines, it would all be currently the Northwest District. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, we want to table it to the next meeting. And do we need a motion, Carmen?
Well, if you table it, it does require you to bring it back to the next meeting. If you just give staff direction, it can come back when staff's ready to bring it back.
Oh, thank you, Carmen. Let's do that.
Yeah, that sounds like what we need to do.
Then I think staff has enough direction to proceed and you can go on to the next item, Mayor.
Right. So are you okay with that, Cynthia?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we'll move on to item F is at Frank. Discussion and necessary action regarding change order 1 for the Rhome East Wastewater Treatment Plant construction project as the city administrator to process future change orders up to $25,000. You want to explain the change order, Cynthia?
Yeah, so this is a change order for the East Wastewater Treatment Plant. And you can see it's 6384. Keep in mind, this is, I understand probably council's perspective, keeping a tight lid on change orders, definitely, because you don't want to award something to a low bidder and then, they change order it to death and it ends up being more expensive than, some of the other projects. This particular change order is really logistical in nature. So it involves the removal of a fence and some fence posts to be able to get access to the East Wastewater Treatment Plant, and then really addressing some drainage issues by adding a culvert and head walls on that gravel road that goes back to the East Wastewater Treatment Plant. So it's not the actual project itself that this change order is addressing. It's those items. When they took the posts out, basically they were corroded, and so they don't necessarily think that's probably the best thing to do is to put them back. So that's what this change order is. And so we're also asking, when you're looking at change orders, you've got a contract time. The contract was originally, 270 calendar days. And, it takes time to wait for change orders to go through the process. So staff is also asking for authorization to process. If there are future ones that, up to 25, we would just process them. And of course, keep you apprised of them when we do so. And anything over 25 would be brought back to you.
Do I hear a motion that we make that move? Sam?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we accept staff's recommendation
Okay, do I hear, and Michelle's got a second. So Shannon,
Does that include authorizing staff to handle any change orders under 25,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem McCabe,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Ty,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Priest,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Eason,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Majors,
Aye.
thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
okay, and moving now to item G, discussion and any necessary action regarding funding for the audio-visual system providing live streaming upgraded sound for the communication center in advance of in-person meetings. Cynthia, you get the whole meeting. That one's got you on.
Yes, so I know council had authorized staff to expend up to $6,000 in working with vendors. I mean, this is the best price we've gotten. I think it's fairly low budget as far as AV equipment is concerned. It does include, I've got a list there of what it includes, but essentially what it will do, it will upgrade the microphones. It will upgrade the speaker system. So right now in the community center, there's only those 2 speakers on the front wall, back wall, front wall, whichever way, the room's facing. And this would be adding speakers in the ceiling throughout the audience. So audience members would be able to hear better as well. It's also all the software and the equipment needed to record the meetings and live stream the meetings. And we found kind of a workaround for that live streaming in the way that we're setting the system up that will actually allow us to continue to use GoToMeeting essentially to live stream. And so we would have a stationary camera, and if you are walking in the glass doors, it would be that corner up there. And if you've been in the community center, we have set it up a little bit different in preparation for in-person meetings. So council sits along the wall with the windows. We're going to shut the door, that first door that goes into the kitchen, for a portion of that table to come down that way. Staff would sit behind there, and that camera would be able to pan and see all the council. It would be stationary, but it would see all the council members and the back of who was ever at the podium speaking. Anyway, so, but that price came in at $97.13. What I would tell you is I think that that's a good price. I think that's the best that we're going to get. And it is buildable, it's reusable. Some of that, depending on, what happens in the future, would accommodate meetings that would happen there. We could use those mics and take them to, the new city service campus if that were to go through. So it wouldn't be money wasted. The funding is available. We would partner with our court because they would be using it as well, our municipal court. And so we could use available funds in the technology fund for this.
Yes, Sam.
What's the impact to our budget if we approve this?
Well, it would be, again, the money is available in the court technology fund. So our budget wouldn't be impacted. It would be the court technology fund there, and there is funding available.
Okay, then I'll take staff's recommendation. I make a motion that we accept this. And we extend that to, well, what was the amount? $9,713.
Yeah.
We approve this.
Do I hear a second? Josh is seconding it. Okay, Shannon,
Mayor Pro Tem McCabe,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Ty,
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Priest.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
And we're moving on now to item H, discussion and any necessary action regarding underground utilities. This is a general question that I put on there. It's not specific to any one development or anything, but from more or less this day forward, as we, Cynthia and group, negotiate development groups. What do y'all want to see? Do you want to see everything being underground, or do you want it to be if and something else? And I need your input.
Oh my. Are you talking about making it retroactive where we pay for having all the existing
No,
utilities?
today, right now, we've got, and I don't know where Cynthia is on the particular development agreement, but we've got phase 3 in Bidewell. I propose that we make sure that has underground utilities. And if Prairie Point comes online, that also would have underground utilities. And if the range, so, anything, Sam, in the future is what I'd like to see, what y'all guys want. Yes, Ashley?
All right. After the residents in Bywell, how they were affected by the utility poles, that I would like to see underground utilities. I mean, I was taken back that it was allowed. I mean, that there is utility poles out there in just one section of it. So I want underground utilities.
Anyone else have a comment?
I would jump in. There are a couple of different options that are available to the city in terms of making this a requirement. One is to negotiate with new development as they approach the city and make this part of the development agreement negotiation. Requiring underground utilities across the board is very expensive, and we can't do it arbitrarily just to one neighborhood and not, make it to all neighborhoods or all incoming neighborhoods. And it's practically impossible to go back and impose it on existing neighborhoods. So I don't even think we should seriously consider that from a cost standpoint. But new development will likely oppose these kinds of requirements. And there is a doctrine out there, and I hate to educate developers in how to sue cities, but there is a doctrine out there called regulatory taking that we have to be aware of. And if we encumber our undeveloped property with a lot of regulations, developers may at some point come back to us and say, you're going to have to reimburse us for the cost of these regulations that you've imposed. There are certain cities in the area that you're probably familiar with, large cities, that have imposed underground utilities, but for the most part, those requirements have been done by agreement with the developers because that's how they wanted to develop their particular product. And so it was something that was agreed to as the development came on board. It's expensive to impose it across the board for all comers.
Yeah, but if we're got a developer's agreement, that's not a problem if we can come to an agreement.
And that would be my advice to you, really, that you would try to negotiate on each deal. Now you have to remember, you're going to have to come to them with something in exchange because it is more expensive to bury the utilities. So the city would have to be prepared to negotiate, some sort of quid pro quo to make it worth their while to come to Rome and take that expense. Although we all know sitting here today, they will pass that expense ultimately onto the home buyer, but that does increase the cost of the home. So the product that they want to sell, again, we have to have a product that the market wants to buy. So we just don't want to make it too expensive. So it's a balancing test. And my experience is that it's easier to balance those different needs via a development agreement as developers approach the city and they come to us with an idea. Then we can sit down across the table and we can negotiate, as opposed to just unilaterally requiring utilities across the board throughout the entire undeveloped property of the city.
And Carmen, that was my intent, that it would be development by development, not across the board, but that we would negotiate underground utilities for every development, not just put it in their ordinance and say everybody's got to have one.
And I think that would be something that you could give direction to staff right now, tonight. You could tell them in the future, when we have developers approach the city, we want that to be one of the items that you address with them, and put that into the agreement if at all possible. And I don't think you need to pass a resolution or ordinance to cause that to happen.
We just got to give it directions. Ashley, you have a question?
I mean, I would like to see the underground utilities, and maybe if Cynthia can, you know, negotiate like Harbin is saying. And I mean, because the home buyers are coming. If they're wanting to move to Rome, they're going to, it is right now in the market is hot, or it is, you know, the way that it is growing in the future. They're going to pay the price. The builder is going to, in return, give it to the buyer, but there's also going to be incentive also to them. So, but again, what we saw would happen in Bywell could also happen in another development. So I guess it's just give a little, take a little. So Cynthia can negotiate.
Cynthia will also have to remind me, we also have franchise agreements with utility providers, and so we'll have to negotiate with them also on how those costs are to be allocated, because oftentimes the developer will want to pass the cost to the utility and the utility will balk. So we'll have multiple players at the table.
Yes, Sam?
Underground utilities, I think, are much more pleasing for a nicer looking neighborhood. I appreciate Mr. Adkins giving his views, and I don't want to potentially give ourselves a liability by making it across the board. So can we, I mean, are we looking at maybe addressing and saying we give staff direction to attempt to negotiate underground utilities in all future development agreements? And does that meet our need? Because like the phase 3 would have a development agreement. The Bywell phase 3 would have a development agreement. We negotiate that it be underground utilities. Is that what we're looking for here?
Yes.
Do we need a motion, or
I think we're giving
everyone nods their head and Cynthia says she understands?
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion.
Direction, basically.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add that, Councilman Eason, is that we can't force anybody to negotiate with us. So if we want to impose our will, we will have to do that by ordinance. If we're willing to negotiate, then we can do it by development agreement, but we have to bring something to the table to induce them to agree to it.
Okay, now we do have an ordinance now that says everything will be underground. So you're saying that's not sufficient?
That's the planned development. And that's like we talked about in the case of Bywell, when you have a planned development, it's like those are components that can be in the planned development. And for whatever reason, it did not get, when that was negotiated, when that happened many years ago, that wasn't included.
And I realize that what I'm asking is this day forward, if we've got something that says underground utilities are required by ordinance, is that sufficient, or do we need another ordinance?
You would need another ordinance if you want to require underground utilities in all future developments. What is authorized right now under the plan development ordinance is something akin to a cafeteria plan of options that they can choose from to incorporate into the plan development, but it is not really a requirement of any plan development. Those are just the things that we put out and suggest that we would like to be considered, but they're not obligatory.
But you're saying, one, we say tomorrow Cynthia is going to start negotiating development X. Do we need an ordinance before she starts that to
No,
help?
ma'am. No, ma'am.
We can
No.
leave it alone. Okay. Cynthia,
Yeah.
I'm confused. You,
Well, and we've had this conversation, I think, Ben, and, you know, and I mean, I kind of have heard some feedback already. So my intention, for example, with phase 3, which he has not yet come to us. I've just had an engineer come to me at this point. But my intention would be to negotiate for the underground utilities to be included in that. Now, on that, just to be clear, and Carvin, you can jump in, but right now, I mean, the plan development is by well wide, right? It's phase 1, 2, and 3. And so the developer in phase 1 did it voluntarily. He wasn't, I mean, and before, I believe it was even in the city, and his intention was to do it, and then he died. And then you had another developer come along years later, since it wasn't in there, in the actual plan development ordinance, then he didn't do them. Now, Carvin, I guess my question to you, I can negotiate and try to get that developer to put them underground, but we can't require it because in the plan development, as it's zoned, in the zoning right now, it's not required. But I'm going to negotiate and try to do, like you said, a quid pro quo to try to get him to do that.
do we
That is-
need, I'm sorry, Carmen,
That is correct.
do we need an ordinance? I guess I'm still confused. Do we need it in zoning, or do we actually have to have an ordinance?
Well, Cynthia is correct. They have zoning right now, and it is a PD zoning, so that if we wanted to change the zoning, we would have to go through the zoning change process. And we would then have to, I guess, develop a new plan development or something. Kind of caught me flat-footed there. I'm not sure what we would do in response to that, but it would be something we'd have to negotiate from scratch. Now, the development agreement is something we can just do today. They have their zoning, but they can agree to do additional items, which would include burying the utilities, you know, if we can negotiate a deal. And that wouldn't require any changes to zoning. It wouldn't require any ordinance. It would just be a development agreement.
Okay, and like, for instance, if we have Prairie Point come online, you would be negotiating with them, among other things, for underground utilities.
Well, there again, that's already, now, I haven't looked, and Carvin, you may remember, I was not here during that, but it's already a planned development. They may well be in there. I'll have to double check. They may already be in there. Do you remember?
I don't know.
No, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they are a planned development. And so that area is already zoned, and effectively whoever develops that area has their deal on the ground. So.
Okay.
I'll
But
check that agreement,
yeah, okay.
zoning.
Do
But
we need,
the Sahihi,
Before.
so for the Sahihi one, just so you know, I mean, we haven't gotten to this point, but they're on Holly Parkway. That, you know, we're going to be, you know, I've talked about it with them, and, you know, so we will talk about it with them, but they haven't come back with their detailed site plan yet. They kind of, anyway. So we'll
And I think we're going to be looking at this as planned development. If Susie sells a lot and somebody buys it to build on in Old Town or Crown Point is underground, but we couldn't require underground utilities at that point, could we? If they're in an area that everybody is above ground.
Like in old Rome.
Right.
What did you guys do for the Moore Street properties?
In that one, it was a negotiated deal, remember? I mean, we got a planned development for that one, didn't we? If I'm remembering correctly.
I don't think Moore Street is a planned development. It's single family. Well, I know it's not planned development. So
No, it was single family.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I mean, for an individual lot that's in a part of the city like Old Town Rome, it'd be very difficult to impose on them a requirement to bury the utilities.
Right.
It just,
And that's what I'm saying, but if we have a new development of many houses, then we need, if we can, let's negotiate that in.
Right.
and I'm not saying,
But we'll negotiate. I think we're trying to beat this horse to death. I think
Sam, I was waiting. Sorry. I had my hand up to ask Carbon a question. So sorry if we can go on the line.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that's what I was asking. So if, for instance, the land that's in front of Ellis, so if that's sold, and would you have to, we keep going back and forth now, it's just Cynthia negotiating, we would need to make an ordinance. I mean, we keep going around and around because that's the only land, or could they just put up poles?
Well, the land in front of Ellis is actually in the ETJ, so we definitely can't do anything there. Unless they, unless they voluntarily come in, and I'm not sure if somebody would voluntarily annex themselves in and commit to going underground. I mean, we can certainly ask, but that's a challenge. There's a couple of areas like that, as you pointed out, Council Member Majors, that are a challenge because they're not in they are in the ETJ, and there's that eyeball. Everybody knows what that is, but it's right there on the service road, northbound service road 287, kind of north of the Motel 6, that we have that situation. We had that situation honestly on the hard corner of the southbound 287 and westbound 114. It's in the ETJ. Now, the part of the negotiations that, I talk about is, city services. So, if they're wanting, and you have to be careful with that, I know, but, I mean, I will tell you, I'm aware that you guys prefer underground. So that is in my mind when I'm fielding developers' questions.
Okay, should we move on to the next? Does anybody have any comments? Okay. Good luck, Cynthia. We're hoping for that. Under I, discussion and any necessary action regarding maintenance of easements and alleys. And I am getting continual calls, and I think Cynthia does too, and gosh only knows how many public works get. It appears that all of a sudden, and this is what I'm hearing, that Rome decided to quit mowing anything, and alleys all of a sudden are no longer belong to the city. Help me out here. What are we doing?
Well, I can provide some background. I mean, yes, I mean, that would be, I can see how people could see that, because I know when I came on board, I was hearing that, and then Sean came on board, and it's just not normal practice that the city takes on that liability of mowing easements, rights of ways. That's normally a homeowner responsibility, that they mow up, in the fronts of their yards, sides of their yards, up to the pavement, up to the curb, whether it's the right of way or it's an easement across their property. They're responsible for maintaining that. Now, for whatever reason, Rome has had a history where Public Works has mowed a lot of these easements. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances across the city of Rome. And I know the Public Works Director can chime in as well, but that's a big resource. So if that's, we actually, and, Mayor, you and I have talked about it, but we started developing an ordinance on this to bring to council. And I almost brought it tonight, but it's not quite ready. And, since you were bringing it, I wanted to hold off, but bringing an ordinance to council for your consideration to really formally implement that best practice that cities across the, Texas operate in, and that's that homeowners are required to maintain the easements and rights of ways. So that ordinance, is going to be brought forward for council discussion and direction.
And that's why I wanted to hear from the council before you complete that document is what is it you want Rome to do? Do you want now, if I remember right, in Chisholm and Ellis, that's truly not a problem, except Sam, I don't know who is mowing that flood area. They're kind of behind you on that other street. Do you know?
Yes, various residents of Ellis, we take turn. Well, actually, there's no, just someone ends up mowing it every couple of weeks, whether it's James Miller or Leanne Mikowski or, I mean,
whomever.
yeah, someone in the neighborhood, we mow we call it parkland. We also mow both sides of Ellis on the entrance. The entrance to the neighborhood. We maintain that median strip. The city owns that property, and we all mow it. And we all mow our own bar ditches.
And I think, fortunately, in Ellis, there's not the extreme bar ditches that we see in Bywell and occasionally in Old Town Rome. I have a house right across the street from me that has not mowing the easements. He will be mowing his yard periodically, but the easement today has Johnson grass up to my shoulder. Used to own that property, and
officers should cite them.
You think? So, yes, Ashley. Yes, Ashley.
So, Michelle and Elaine are in front of me. So,
okay. I'm not looking. I have a hole in the top of my head, so y'all put up with me today.
I've never heard of a city mowing easements. Is that that's not a normal practice, right?
It was for Rome.
It was for Rome, but it's not in normal. Well, in most cities, I'll say.
Yeah, I assume that would be a big increase in our budget too.
Well, and I think we should probably clarify easements are different than rights of way, remember? So we're
not talking about the easements.
Well, I think it's all encompassing right now, as I understand it, but just, it's different, for instance, on the easements, you can have a drainage easement across your property. That doesn't mean that the city would be responsible for mowing it. It's just a drainage easement that the homeowner knows when they buy it because it's on their plat. Case in point, Moore Street, the 6 properties that just got built, and that was very clearly marked. And I made sure that Kyle marked that very well on the plat that we did, so that the homeowner would be aware of that easement, drainage easement. We do have a challenge. I just talked to a lady who lives in Crown Point, behind Sterling. So, I mean, there is a challenge there. There absolutely is. I mean, I talked to another gentleman, like the mayor said. I mean, I'm constantly, and Carvin will probably attest to this, but since I got here, this has been kind of a thorn. So it would be that's why staff has been moving, to introduce ordinances and things like that. And that's why we're developing that to bring to you for your consideration. So your direction would be very helpful.
And
Okay.
part of the thorn that I am in Cynthia's side is that we can't spend public dollars on improving private property. An easement belongs to the underlying fee holder. I'm getting legalese on you, but that means the property owner, they own that easement and they have all the duties and responsibilities of maintaining the easement. It does not belong to the city. And so if the city is mowing it and maintaining it, we are arguably spending public dollars on the upkeep of somebody's private property, which is constitutionally prohibited. Now, there are going to be certain occasions where a piece of private property impacts the public safety, and so we may choose for a public reason to maintain part of that property. And sometimes cities will choose to maintain, say, a steep cliff or a steep bar ditch or something because they have unique equipment that can maintain it that a lot of private property owners would not own. And so it sometimes makes sense for the public to go ahead and bear that cost. But that needs to be on a case by case basis. It's not generally done by cities that they just across the board mow everybody's easement. It's very expensive for the city to take that cost.
Well, and the other thing I would interject, it's not just that, maybe it's hard to mow or they can't get the equipment in there for the public good. It's more about maintaining positive drainage flow. So case in point, Crown Point. And actually, as Council Member Easton referred to, I mean, they've got a drainage way in that community. And so there may be instances where, we're trying to keep that drainage going. And so we might go in that case, that would be the public good of maintaining that positive drainage flow.
And I think it's confusing. I see what you're saying, that drainage flow, if we're talking about the same thing in Crown Point, is big, very deep. Are you talking about the one that picks up off Troxel, goes to Sterling, and then,
yes,
that somebody needs to maintain that. But then by the same token, I'm hearing that it's the property owner's position, or should be, that they keep and maintain the alleys. Never, the alley is, I have an alley. The alley is not mine. I have had it mowed forever, type thing, just because I don't want it in my yard. But in years past, I'd hear a mower going, and it would be a city mower cleaning that alley. And we have one that's across on Russell between the apartments that runs behind 3 houses, an alley. It's actually turned into a road more than an alley. Is that something the property owner should be maintaining?
Well,
I'm confused.
I think, well, and Carvin, I mean, you can talk up on the legal side, but it's an expensive proposition no matter which way you go, because, and I think it's hard because if you are going to deed that alley, most of those alleys are not true alleys. I mean, they're not city maintained. There's not a roadway there. I mean, the closest one that comes to it, Mayor, is the one you referenced, which council took action right when I got here, basically, not to continue to maintain that, because when you kind of maintain it, but you can't maintain it to standard, you're encouraging people to drive it, but then you have to then increase that level of maintenance. And so when, we've historically had 20, 30, wasn't until 2 years ago that we'd had 100,000 and then now 120,000 in our street budget. We don't have the budget to maintain all the alleys that are in Old Town Rome. And I mean, it's just hard. If we were going to go the legal route to survey those and deed them back to the adjoining property owners, that would be an expensive endeavor. If you maintain them, you're going to really increase the traffic in those. And a lot of times, I mean, I have heard I've had conversations with homeowners where they don't want other people driving down those alleys. And if you maintain them, then you're going to encourage more traffic to go down there. So,
But if the property owner maintains it, you've got the same issue. You're saying city's not going to do it because somebody will take advantage of it. But if the property owner mows it, trims it, whatever, it's still a maintained alley that people, your argument about people driving down it, I think it's moot.
well, I'm just trying to say the different things that I've been hearing. You know, staff will do whatever you guys want. I just think if we're going to maintain them, then we're definitely going to need more staff and more mowers.
And I think that's what we need to say. What do you guys as the council want to see Rome do? And again, we defer to Carvin's expertise. Elaine, I think you had your hand up before we ignored you for so long.
Oh, that's fine, because everything that's been talked about is important. So it's my understanding that an easement basically is a legal document that is taken and given by a property owner. It usually follows the title of the that goes of that property to the ongoing ownership. And so Carvin has already explained that. Right of way is something that is set out when the plat is put in place, in this case, in the city of Rome. And so that right of way belongs to the city. They are the owner of it.
Not every single time. That's part of the problem with Rome. You can have what's called a right-of-way easement. It's confusing, and that just adds to the legal confusion.
So is it no document, just a matter of maintenance?
Well, for better or worse, our history goes all the way back to the railroads granting the city of Rome property. And when they made the railroad grant, they basically drew the lots and roads on blue line survey paper, and it was not clear where the title was to all of the roads and alleys. So for any given property, we have a first obligation to figure out, does the city own it or does the abutting property owner own it? Because it can vary in different parts of our city. In some of the newer parts, the property line goes to the middle of the road, and there's just something called a right-of-way easement that goes over the top that gives us the right to pave it and run our roads, cars and stuff, but it doesn't mean we own it. It means the underlying property owners actually own it, but they have given us a perpetual easement to use it. So it really does depend on where we are in the city and what alley or right of way we're looking at.
Is signage an option where if, for example, we mow the easement that's next to our north property line, and it belongs to a pipeline company. It's owned by the Rolling V developer, but we mow it to keep the varmints and the snakes and stuff, back. But that is an easement. We don't charge them anything for it. They allow us to do that. But what we ran into was everybody wanted to cut across to get to their mailbox. They would rut up our property. They would cut across pieces of our property, and we were mowing it. And of course, they rutted it up so bad that we would have to repair it so we could mow. So the city then put up some signs at the edge of the city limits. and said, no vehicles beyond this point. It stopped it. So it's signage at these entrance points where let's talk about the mayor's property. That area that runs behind her house, could signage go up that says no entrance at this point, and then they can mow it and it not be used, not be accessible.
Who would mow it?
Doesn't say the owners mowed it or the city owned it, whoever. But what the deal is, you don't want them cutting across there and running it up and tearing it up. It's not meant to be an alley, a used alleyway. So can we restrict the entrance to that with signage?
I don't think in that particular alley it would work because some of the property that's entrance into their garages or workshops.
So it could, I'm just asking if it's legally doable, and then we just have to identify where those work. That one might be cheaper to put some signage up than to try to maintain it by the city. Just trying to come up with something.
Okay, but if we put a signage up, then who would be responsible for mowing it? All I mow, for instance, is just my 150-foot fence that backs into the alley. I make 2 or 3 swipes up on the rider. But the people across the alley never mow. The only mowing it's ever been has been to the city. And to make it even more confusing, there is a large sewer clean out in part of that alley. So I don't know what that does for the price of eggs, but it is there. And I think it's not exactly behind my house, but almost.
Well, I
I
don't
think the
think we can.
typical city ordinance requires property owners to mow their grass up to the roadway, to the curb or sidewalk. That's typical for
Right.
most cities.
And that's what we were planning on bringing.
But the ones that, quote, don't have a sidewalk or roadway, and how do they know whether, are they going to be at the expense of getting a clear title or whatever to see who owns it? And not to bring up Bywell without somebody here to represent it. It's my understanding when the city of Rome accepted Bywell into the city, that all of the roads there and adjoining property to the roads was given to the city of Rome. And I know that some people there can mow and do their whole, all the way to the road. Some of them have such deep ditches they cannot mow. So I guess I'm looking for guidance for what my phone brings.
Well, I will say, I mean, Bywell, they do have a plat that has dedicated right of way. So I mean, I think Bywell actually is one of the clear properties, Crown Point, Ellis, Chisholm. I think the biggest challenge is Old Town Rome, because it's not dedicated right of way, going back to what Carvin was saying. Can you guys see my map? So this is the Wise County appraisal district, but you have the properties that were identified, but the roads were just left out in the alleys. They weren't dedicated right of way. So that's what he was talking about as part of the challenge. And the alleys are not all consistent within Old Rome. I talked to a gentleman the other day. I'm trying to see, I think he lived, well, right here. Is this, Old Mill. I think he lived right here. And this is actually an alleyway right here. But remember, some people have, you can see this, can you see this right here? Whatever this is, there's something in that butts out into that alleyway. And that happens all over with these alleyways. It's just really challenging. So that's why staff was going to bring forward what we were going to, because it's pretty standard across communities. And we really need to find some consistency. So however council wants to direct us, I think it would be good to have some consistent manner of addressing this. And what staff was bringing forward would be the least expensive. Some of the other ones would be more expensive. So we'd have to have the resources to do that. So
Ashley? You're muted.
Okay, so one, if for the residents, are we going to have a line of residents knocking at the door saying, well, if I'm going to have to start mowing it, and am I going to be deeded back my easement from the city? For instance, one of my neighbors, you know, my son mows her, which is the city's easement, and it's a good chunk of property. You know, but if the city used to mow it, but now we mow it for her because she's, you know, unable to. But it's the city's land. But if she's, you know, has to mow it and everything going forward, or a citizen like that, are they going to say, oh, well, I want that piece of property, I want to build something on it? Are we going to have other residents that possibly could say that? And just like the alleys, if they're going to, if we say, oh, you have to maintain it, you know, what if they're not using it? Say, if it's Joanne or the other neighbors, if they want to push their property out further, could they? I mean, if they're going to have to start maintaining it, I'm just asking in general.
well, when you say it's the city's easement, where are you talking about? I mean, is it really the city's easement? Is it a right of way? What are we talking about?
I would think it's the city's easement. I think it's the city's easement.
Where is it?
It's on Dogwood and Morris. So 199 Morris is what it is. But there's a lot in Old Town Rome. I mean, as you know, Carvin, at Old Town Rome, there's a lot of properties that's all on, you know, this on Blueprint.
I think if I can suggest, it might be best if we not focus on an individual.
Correct.
Property. Let's try and keep this at a high level and decide what's best across the board for the city. I think the first step needs to be that the city will maintain what the city owns up within reason. The property owners will maintain their property up to the roadways, and that would likely include easements, because again, they're still the underlying owner of the property in most of those instances, even though we have an easement, or the utilities companies have an easement, or, you know, all the phone, all those different, there may be multiple easements, but at the end of the day, the resident probably likely owns the property in most instances. So if we start with the presumption the owner should mow it along the roadways, the property owner is going to mow it to the road, to the pavement, I think that will solve most of the problems. And then we'll have to get a little more technical on the alleyways and some of the other very unique properties. But I don't think we can solve it tonight. I think we're going to have to put some staff time into it and figure those unique situations out.
Well, there's quite a few, and I mean, again, so we can bring that ordinance back, but the alleyways, you know, literally there are, even though they're alleyways, you've got houses, you've got buildings that are actually in right of way and in alleys. So so I guess let us bring something back, at least as a starting point for staff, for council to look at, and see what y'all think.
You were just, when y'all get a chance to do it, you'll bring it back. You don't want to table it, we can back next week or next week.
Mayor, we can't hear, or I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You want to just leave it like it is and you'll bring it back without us tabling it where you don't have to be back in 2 weeks.
Yes, although I think we're almost ready to bring something back, at least a starting point. But if you would give us that flexibility, we would appreciate that.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Carvin, can I make a suggestion?
You bet.
Can you come out and ride along with Cynthia around Rome? And look at all the different properties.
I think that's too expensive of an endeavor.
Come on, free of charge to buy you taco casa.
Yeah, I'll make the city council buy me lunch or something. Maybe I can do that.
Okay, sounds good.
And, you know, what she is referring to, though, as Carvin well knows, we have a lot of different colors. You know, some places, you know, don't park your vehicle in the yard. Well, some of the yards go right to the street. You know, and so it's a hodgepodge. You know, but we'll see what y'all guys come back with. And we're moving on now. Discussion and any necessary action regarding naming city buildings and facilities. And that's Mayor Pro Tem McCabe.
Thank you. Before I start, Priest had her hand up for a question. No?
Who did?
Miss Priest, did you have your hand up for something? No? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for helping me. I'm missing some of you guys.
No problem. So as long as I've been on the council, I've always been an advocate of maintaining our history and restoring our history. And that doesn't always just pertain to the buildings, but we also need to maintain the individual history around here. There's a lot of people that have been here for a very long time. They've done a lot over the years to grow this city into what it's become. And there's many ways to do that. And around the country, as we all know, that maybe it's a street or maybe it's a building or a park or something like that. And I know many a times, especially in my background, that a lot of these things are not done until, I'm talking about naming something after somebody, not done until after that person is deceased, so posthumously. So what my thought is to maintain some of the history with the buildings and the people in this town, and looking at not the whole building of the school. And this doesn't matter whether the bond passes or not. I'm talking specifically about the community center that we use as our city council meetings. I know the fire department uses it for training. I'm sure other people use it for training. And so I wanted to see what y'all thought about naming just the community center part as something for somebody that's been around a long time, that has contributed more to this community probably than most people. And my thought was something along the lines of the Marie Moore Educational Community Center. So I wanted to see what y'all thought about that and get your thoughts on it. Not everybody at once.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. She has done so much for our community. Joanne could probably speak, since Joanne has lived here her whole life, as well as Marie. So Joanne could probably tell as many stories as Marie. So she could probably tell as many stories about Marie that we could all probably get teary-eyed about. So I think that is really great that you could say that, Josh. So.
And just for information, Marie, actually, y'all send her a card, mark this down. Her 94th birthday is the 29th of this month. So keep that in mind.
I know
Elaine, yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to say that when I first came on the city council, a suggestion was made to possibly name the building that is the seniors have been using, but we already knew that it was possible that if we proceeded with the plans that were made, that building might be moved or removed if that original bond had passed. And so what we didn't want to do was name that after her and then tear the building down. I mean, you know, that would have not been the right thing to do. So we kind of pushed that back and postponed it. I think that what Josh just suggested is a great idea, and for two reasons. Not only her longevity and the things that she's offered, but she actually worked at the school, from what I understand, in the cafeteria area. So, gee, that's right there. And the other thing is that she was instrumental in getting, you know, the fire department up and going back when. And so what's the rest of the building? It's the fire department. And I just thought, I just think that's the perfect place. And no matter what happens with our facilities, it looks like that building is one that's going to stay and hopefully gets upgraded to where it needs to be as far as compliance and ADA and all those things. And so it should be there a long time. And so I just have to, I think it's very kind and good, and it recognizes what the population has said through our surveys, that they want that historic fabric that runs through that into all of Rome. And I think that's something that we would all enjoy and can benefit from. So I like it.
Yes, Sam.
Thank you, Joanne. I know Marie, I like Marie. I've heard many stories of some almost legendary things that she's done about taking care of children and donating to and helping support the fire department. This is a very nice thing to do. However, I don't know all of the people that have lived here a long time, and there are probably some quite worthy people. If we're going to adopt some type of policy for naming buildings or streets or the such, then I think we need to be a little bit more formal than Mayor Pro Tem McCabe has a wonderful idea. We all get sentimental and because we all like Marie. Because I do. I like Marie. I think she's a wonderful lady. But I think we might want to take a step back, because there are some other people that have, from what I understand, that have contributed to this community. If we're going to adopt some type of policy for naming buildings, then I think we need to get a little more formal. Find some nominations, considerations, something more than it's a great idea at a council meeting one evening.
Yes, Ashley.
Michelle, would you like to speak? Or Josh, I think that we need to name it Marie, after Marie. She has been instrumental in this town. So I make a motion that we name the community center after Marie Moore. If anybody would like to second the motion.
Okay, I've got a second with Josh. Shannon?
Yes, ma'am. I'm writing the motion.
Bless your heart. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem McCabe?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Ty?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Priest?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason.
I very much respect Marie. I like Marie. I think we're rushing into this too quickly. I think there are potentially too many people that are being slighted just because they're not known to us. So I'm going to vote nay.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors.
I'm 100% in favor for our dear friend Marie Moore.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, now we didn't talk about when and if. Is someone going to talk to Marie and make sure it's okay with her? And when are we going to do this?
Would we like to do it at maybe a celebration or maybe a birthday celebration you and I have been speaking about?
Yeah.
And everyone would be invited, and maybe we could do something. Josh, you're really good at writing up those proclamations. Maybe we could do something at her birthday. Joanne and I have been thinking and putting together a birthday celebration. Would you like to put together a proclamation and maybe doing something? Maybe we can talk about it.
Sure, we can do that.
Sounds good.
No, and it doesn't have to have a name go up right now. We know we're in the process of waiting for some stuff. But the proclamation, I think it's important if we're going to do this, we don't wait till she's not here to do it. And so, who knows? So moving right along now, y'all want to go ahead. It's 10 after 9. Do you want to keep on keeping on? Is everybody okay with us staying a little bit longer? Okay. We're moving on now to item K, discussion and any necessary action regarding a review of the proposed November bond items, their intent and terms. Elaine, that be you.
Thank you, Mayor. A few weeks ago, I heard the mayor say something that made me step back and consider some things for a few weeks. And what the mayor said was something along the lines that she was a little confused, or she was a little, just the thought process of why we would have a bond proposition for the First Street property if it was going to be a building that wasn't going to be used immediately. And that made me stop and think about the intent that long night when we had that 7-hour meeting and rehashing things, and it just took a long time to work our way through so many things. And so I gave that a lot of thought. And so I began to ask folks, some I knew, some I didn't know, what they thought about all the bonds that we had put out there and the discussion that we'd made, and what our intent was and our vision was for the infrastructural needs of the city. And I learned two things. And one was that there seems to be some confusion about the two propositions. Some people think that it's an either or situation, when the intent was that one proposition was for city buildings and to be compliant, be up to code, and to try to get as many departments under as few roofs as possible so that maintenance costs would be less and those kinds of things. And so there was some confusion, and the First Street property would be more about things that the city might use that in the future for, whether it was museum, whether it was Chamber of Commerce, whether it was economic development district. There were many opportunities that we could and still keep that historic flavor of that of that particular building. And so their other comments were generally, they thought that there was a lot on there. And so they wanted to know if there was a way to simplify and some of the things that we discussed and the things we put in motion. So what I then began to think about, brainstorm about was there another way? Was there a more cost saving way than having two propositions to do with buildings? And so what I did is I went back and pulled up a grant that we looked at previously. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's called the Texas Community Development Block Grant Program. And it is a grant that focuses on towns, communities, cities that have I don't want to use the word historic was because you don't want to get everything truly designated as historic, but it has that old flavor and they want to keep that in, but they need to bring things up to code and use those facilities. And so this is one of those grants that we could actually apply for, that we weren't restricted by the income situation. So I think that the city could save money by not putting it as a proposition, because if it passed, then it would be all revert to the tax situation. If we go the grant route, the city would only have to come up with matching funds, and a big portion of those costs would come from the grant. So instead of paying, let's just say, $1 million to have that building renovated, we can get somewhere along the lines of $350,000, $400,000 and from this grant alone. And that doesn't mean that there's not others out there. So I just know that this is a cheaper, less expensive way for us to address that property than having it as a proposition. And so I would like some discussion on maybe we could restructure that so that we could take advantage of grant money and in kind and reduce those costs. So I'd like some thought about that.
Michelle?
So you're talking about taking the old city hall off the bond completely and renovating it with grants and matching funds.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's a short story. You know what we would, this is just, I'm just brainstorming here. What we need to do is to, I think, is to associate with the grant writing company, maybe the one that we've already been using. They have now a bigger knowledge about the city of Rome. Rome has made some commitments that makes this a better grant than it was a year ago. We've applied for some grants. We've applied for a grant. We've bought into and made some major adjustments in our infrastructure. We have developed the thoroughfare committee, and we've got TxDOT working with us. We've got the railroad company working with us, and all in those benefits this area of town. And so that's what these kind of grants are looking for, is that kind of investment in ourselves, that kind of work, working together with the big players that can help us get where we need to go with that thoroughfare, and with this building being just barely off of Main Street. it certainly is a building that falls within their criteria. And I think we've done a lot of work to strengthen our position to get this grant or a grant that's similar to this.
Elaine said a matching grant. In other words, if we get $300,000, do we have to put up 300?
No, I think it's 10%. So it'd be 30,000 versus us if we went the bond route and it cost us, I'm making up a number here, but let's just say it cost $500,000 to renovate that building. That would all be city expense. And whereas we can find 1 or 2 grants, and instead of spending $500,000, we could spend 30.
Well, and we're not in any big hurry to renovate that. In other words, you put in for a grant and then you have a prayer session for.
Oh yes, every time, you know, you pray for it. You're praying whenever you're putting it, doing all your homework, and you're praying whenever you fill out the forms, and then when you mail it, you have a big prayer.
Right, yeah, and it's also, and I don't know, Cynthia May can answer this. The gentleman that we're working with on the CBDG, whatever it is, grant, he said for that grant, and it may not be the one you're talking about, you can only put in every 3 years. Do you know if there's something like that?
Well, we've not ever, this particular grant has to do with city properties that are within, I don't think that what he's talking about, because that's got to do with the wastewater situation or the water situation. This is different. This has got to do with buildings. They want a lot of exterior work to make sure that it's ADA compliant. They require that. They want to make sure that the exterior of the building that we would be talking about has the curbs, the gutters, that kind of thing. They want to see not everything interior. They want to see the exterior work done as well. And so,
and I think that's a good idea. And even if we had to wait 3 years, I don't see any urgent time right now to repair that old city hall. What do you guys think? Don't everybody speak at once. Sam?
Oh. Sorry,
Thank you, Joanne. Elaine, I'm very glad you brought this up. I think you're pretty spot on that we should start by removing that bond completely so that that's not even on the ballot in November, so that we pursue that property on First Street with a grant in the future. I have other comments about other parts of the bonds, and I will leave that to after we finish this part of the discussion.
Okay, and remember, we cannot promote the bond. We can discuss stuff, but we cannot promote. And Carvin, you know the legalese on that, but we can't spend tax money promoting a bond. Is that more or less how you read it, Carvin?
That is correct. It's just it gets a little bit nuanced here in that there is a difference between advocating for the bond election and advocating for a particular outcome of the election. So if you're just discussing about whether you want to call the election and call for the bonds one way or the other, I don't see that as advocating for one position or another. So as long as you keep the discussion about whether you want to call the election or not, that's a different matter. But when you move to the next level and you start talking about which outcome you want, that is prohibited.
Well, just to interject, I mean, just to clarify, I mean, the council has already called for bond proposals.
So we'd have to amend that.
So
I
you,
correct?
and if I'm hearing what Councilmember Priest is saying, would be to basically rescind that one item and not say you don't want that to go forward to an election. Carvin, I don't know if you know but they've already taken action to, call the election for these 4 proposals. I think they still have the, authority to say, well, we don't want to go forward with this one, or, that one. But I mean, all 4 have already been called.
Yeah, they have been authorized, but I believe they could stop them pretty much up until election.
Right.
Ashley,
Elaine, thank you for looking for a grant for this. Well, I guess it would be easier to remove it, and just in case the bond does not go through, then there is an option to get a grant for it, to have it repaired, to bring it for use, I guess. So I'm not saying anything more. So
Sam.
I'm just trying to, my goal is to save
Wait,
money.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I called Sam too early. Go ahead, Sam.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Well, you got the floor. Go for it.
I understand. I'll wait.
Anybody else?
Elaine.
Elaine?
I do think that this would take 2 motions. And, if that's not the case, I think the first motion would be to rescind it, to take this particular item off of the bond. And then the second motion that I think, and it's just my opinion, is that we to authorize whoever needs to move forward with the grant company. We don't want to wait, because grant cycles they're not uniform with each other. And so you never know until you get deep into this when exactly those submission dates are, and you got to do your homework. So I would want us to be aggressive in learning about this, see what they are. It may be 9 months or so before we could even apply, and then you might have to wait 6 months for it to come about. You can always turn it down if it's awarded and you don't want to do it. So it is one of those things that is time consuming anytime you do a grant. So that would be the second motion then, is given the authority to work with the grant writing company to look at these options for funding for that building.
I have 2 motions and I have a second on the first one. What about the second one? And on the second one?
I second both of them. So
okay, I'll be clear enough to go from.
Sorry, Cynthia's saying no. So
Can I just clarification? So on the second one, getting with the grant company, definitely, we can get in contact with GrantWorks, but are you authorizing any funds, or is this just kind of research? I mean, they're not going to do the work for free.
Yeah, and I don't think we would need a motion if we're going that way. Is that what you're saying, Cynthia?
If you're just asking me to, kind of start researching, but if we're wanting, to come back with a grant proposal, I mean, I will tell you, we're going to need help with that, because that's, and so we would need money. We would need you to authorize the expenditure of funds to onboard GrantWorks for this purpose. And I'm not sure.
Can you reach out to them and see what that cost would be?
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted that clarification. Do you want me to just kind of get information and bring it back and then we figure out what we're going to do? Because I can talk with them and we can see, hey, is this realistic? Do we have a chance? And, and then, I can bring that information back. That's the clarification I'm looking for. Okay. As long as we're all clear. I'm clear and you're clear. Right now it's just to go talk with GrantWorks and I'll bring that information back.
And let's repeat the first one and take care of it, is to take the proposition. Cynthia, help me out. I don't know which one it is off the bond request.
Well, so it would be the 105, as I understand, the motion is to remove the 105 First Street from the bond proposals.
Correct. Do I hear a motion?
I second it.
Elaine's motion that we're just clarifying it, and Ashley seconded it.
Yes.
So, Ms. Shannon, can you take care of that?
Mayor Pro Tem McCabe.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Ty.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Priest.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason.
Aye.
Councilmember Majors.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so Cynthia, you can take that off, and then Elaine will come back. Cynthia will come back probably the next meeting and tell us what goes on with GrantWorks, etc. Okay, now Elaine's got her hand up again, so yes, ma'am.
Right. So you know that I looked at all of them. So something similar to that is I looked then at the bond that has to do with the parks. And that was when we were really tired, when we got that far. And so what we did was we thought that the bond was matching funds for the grant that we were looking at for the Bywell Park. And then there at the very last, we threw in some extra money in that grant package. I mean, not grant package, the bond package to replace equipment, maybe get additional equipment. I can't, playground equipment at the family park. And so I got to thinking that if the bond was to pass and the grant did not come through, then the only part of that bond that we would really use would be for the family park. And so we already know that if we don't have to, even if the bond passes and we don't have to use it, it's kind of like a pre-approved loan. But if something happens, like we don't get the grant, then we wouldn't need to access that. Instead, what I'd like to suggest is that we look at another park grant for the family park. And once again, instead of paying the full amount through a bond that would affect our taxes and that kind of stuff, instead we separate that and we go out for a grant for that. And instead of us paying the full price, what we would pay is the in-kind, the matching funds, if we were to get a grant for the family park. So what I'd like to suggest is we separate that additional money we put in there at the last. Don't put it in the bond. Instead, let's go for grant money, and it'll cost us less if we go that way.
And Sam, you may know the answer to this. Aren't they already working on a grant? Sam, you're muted.
Yes, it's my understanding the park board is already working on that grant. And that's what the $150,000 was for a matching grant for the park there in Bywell.
I'm just saying separate those two.
Well, Elaine, I agree with you completely. I was going to suggest we separate them, but for a different reason. But your reason is better than mine. So, um, so I'm thinking that what we need to do is change it from 300,000 back to the 150,000 for the matching funds. And since it's 150,000, perhaps we should, instead of taking it to the voters, we should make it a certificate of obligation, and pass that as it is.
Now, are you talking about the $150,000 for the buy well issue, or are you
Yes.
talking the 150
No,
for the
I'm
family park?
50,000 for the buy well part.
Well, I'd have to think about that, but I'm just saying by separating them, it gives us the opportunity to apply for grant money for the family park.
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
in the end, it would cost us less.
I agree with that completely. I agree with that completely. What I'm saying is, instead of taking because 150,000, when you're starting to compare these bonds of what's going in, you're looking at 5.7 million, and then you have 150,000. It's kind of really big, teeny tiny, you know.
And it all counts.
It all does count. I know. But I just think of that park in Bywell as that's in the plan. We did surveys. A lot of people talked about it. That's what I was thinking. We may want to just do that with a certificate of obligation.
Ashley,
Elaine, thank you for going out and looking for these grants. I'm not for the certificate of obligation for the Bywell grant. I think that we should do a new survey we're even looking for that, doing a new survey for the Bywell Park. Because what I am getting calls for whenever people run into me at Dollar General, they're not for the park. So I think that we should listen to the citizens before we take it to all the citizens. So, but thank you again. But I'm not in favor for that one, Sam. So, but any other grants, Elaine? But thank you so much for your hard work. What else do you have for us? What else? What else?
Well, let's deal with this one first. I think that there's two things on the floor, and Mayor, it's your call, but I'm just saying that I'd like to separate that, and then we can talk about Sam's suggestion. Is that okay?
it sounds good. And Sam has another comment.
I believe Michelle Ty has a comment first.
I'm sorry, do what, Michelle? Okay. Michelle.
You know, it's funny, Ashley. I talk to people, and they love the idea of having the park in Bywell. So I suppose we're just talking to different people. So, you know, we did a survey. It came out one way. I suppose we could always do another survey if we didn't like that one.
Michelle, yes. Did you have a comment? No.
She did not.
Sorry. Okay, Josh does.
Thank you. So I see both Elaine and Sam's point here. We spent a lot of money already on a survey where the entire town gave input into the parks. And by that survey, everybody wanted parks. Now, I'm sure there's a few individuals that are against it, and that's okay. But, you know, I don't think we need to spend more money on another survey to see what happens when people have already given that answer. Now, I know Elaine's looking at all these grants, but we do have to remember that even if we get these grants, we still have to find that matching money for those grants. And this is where I start seeing Sam's point of view on it is if we do if we split it and we do the 150,000 grant for the Bywell Park, that's assuming that we get that entire grant. Now, if we only get half of that grant, then we only have to issue a certificate of obligation for half the $150,000. So we're looking at, you know, the best possible option here of getting the full grant. So I'm up for a CO depending upon the amount of what it would be. And I know that's going to be hard to tell ahead of time. So I kind of got to lean with Elaine here and going with the two different bonds. If we knew what the price was going to be ahead of time, then I would maybe be, if it was lower, I'd be closer to getting that CO than going for another bond.
So Josh, let me understand for sure. You're speaking of the CO for half of that 150,000. If we get it and we still owe 30,000, you're looking at a certificate of obligation. Am I following you?
Well, what Elaine is wanting to do right now is split the 300,000 into two separate bonds, right? One bond for the buy well part. No, did I misunderstand you on that, Elaine?
For grants, I think, right?
Okay, so you're wanting to do a bond for the buy well and a grant for the other 150?
Right, because just like with what we just talked about for the old bank building, we've got to investigate what grants are out there. We need to know the particulars. We need to know what those costs would be for the grant writers to look at that. So what they find, maybe they can only find a grant that matches what we want to do, and maybe it's only 100,000. But
Okay.
maybe the in-kind is only 5%, or maybe it's 20%. And so we don't know what that is. I think that we have time, do the investigative work, get the particulars, and then once we know that, we can then come back and look at, if it's a small amount, maybe we take that out of next year's budget, out of the general fund. It just depends on how much that is. Maybe we need $150,000 like what we're looking at over in Bywell. Then in that case, we still have time then to look at whether it's a CO or do we want to go to the next election. But we've got to do our homework on the front end so that we know how to handle then our budget.
Right.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
I better understand it now. So then, yeah, I'm for the doing the one bond for the buy well and then a grant for the other, and then whatever matching part, depending on whatever matching fee is, maybe another bond, maybe a CO. So yeah, I'm with you on that, Elaine.
But I'm confused now, Josh. What I think I'm hearing from Elaine, let's don't do a bond for anything on those two. Let's go for a grant. And
So
Elaine,
they're looking for a grant on the buy well project, right? The Parks and Rec Board is looking for a grant on the buy well project.
Right. They've got that, I think, in process.
Right. 100% would be $150,000. So we need to do a bond for $150,000 to be able to cover our half should we get the 100%. What she's saying is the other 150,000 for the park equipment, we just look at a grant for that. So she wants to cut that bond in half, make it 150,000 bond, and then we look at other options for the other money.
And to remember, with the bond for $150,000 buy well, if we don't get that grant, we will never use that bond if it passes.
Or if we only have to use half
of it. It would be specific to that park and that grant. And so it's one of those deals, it's pre-approved loan if the grant comes through. But if the grant doesn't come through, or it is a smaller award than the full amount, then we would only draw from the bond the minimum amount that we need to make that happen. And because there's always a possibility you're not, that we're not awarded at all. That's one of the reasons I wanted to separate it, because I didn't want the family park then to get tied in with something that might not even happen over here with their grant. And they really need to be separate and not get in each other's business, so to speak. Let's keep the grants separate based on the parks. And I think we can save money that way.
Ashley?
No, Michelle.
Oh, I'm
Michelle.
sorry. Michelle is too far to the left of my screen. Next time we'll put you elsewhere.
I agree with splitting the two parks. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the CO on it. I just feel like we would be forcing other citizens to pay for a park that's not even around them. But I do agree with splitting those two and taking it to the voters for sure.
Ashley?
I agree with Michelle. So is anybody wanting to make a motion or so we can keep this meeting going? So Lane, where were you?
So it's almost 10, so let's move it on. So
Elaine, where were you before? I think that was one of the ones I was arguing about last time. So where were you prior to my argument?
Okay, I make the motion that we take $150,000 out of the proposed bond for parks and just reduce that to $150,000 that will be used for the Bywell Park should that grant be awarded. Then I would, and when we've got a second over there, but then we would also then ask Cynthia to talk to the grant folks about looking at grants for the family park.
But as long as it's not a CO like what Michelle was saying.
No, we're not talking COs. We're investigating.
Okay, that's as long as I'm with Michelle 100%. So
okay, Sam, are you doing a second? Or okay, Sam is giving a second to the motion. Okay, Shannon, can you restate the motion and call for a vote?
Okay, it looks like the motion is to remove 150,000 out of the proposed bond for the parks to be used for Bywell if grant is awarded, and authorize city administrator to speak with Grant Works regarding cost of the playground equipment.
Okay, we have
Is
a
that
motion
correct?
and a second, and let's go to call for a vote, please.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem McCabe?
Aye.
Councilmember Ty?
Aye.
Sorry, sometimes it gets hard to listen, read, and write at the same time. Councilmember Priest?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors?
aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're going to move on to item L, discussion and any necessary action regarding amending public presentations and input rules of procedures. Again, Elaine, you're on. You're muted. There you
Sorry.
go.
I feel like I'm talking way too much here. I just, and you hear me talk about, we learn from our mistakes. And last week I felt like we had a real learning opportunity. So I ask that we add an item to our public participation form and the procedures to do that. And what I'm suggesting is that when someone wants somebody else to read theirs, and especially since we're going to go back to public meeting in September, then I think that it'll be easier for us to do this. But we have people that read a letter, and that person that actually wrote the letter is there. So that's okay as long as the person that is the author of the letter is present. If the author of the letter cannot be present, then the author of the letter needs to contact the city secretary and get the letter to the city secretary so that the city secretary is for sure who is the author and that they are doing that of their own validity. And so then it can come by mail, it can come by email, it can be delivered in person. The conversation with the secretary could be by phone, however, but it's got to be between the author and Shannon, the city secretary, and the city secretary will be the one reading it and not somebody else. That way we don't have any people in the middle. And it's direct conversation between the author and the city secretary that's going to read it. And I think that will keep some confusion and some of the things that happened last week. Hopefully that never happens again. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept item number 8 on the public participation form for that reason.
Sam, you're ahead of me.
Thank you very much. I'd like to discuss the entire form. I'd like to discuss the entire form as long as this form is up for discussion. I want to discuss the whole thing, so forgive me. I just did not second it yet. For example, when we talk about item number 5, that it is all presentations by the public are limited to no more than 3 minutes. That's total, not per topic. I tend to disagree with that. I think you should have 3 minutes per topic. Now you get into the discussion of, well, one person could have 10 topics and chew up 30 minutes. I get that. We could have a round robin where you get one, somebody has 5 topics. I think they should have 3 minutes per topic, but I think you need to make certain that everyone that submits a presentation gets an opportunity. You don't necessarily, once you have the floor, you keep it for the full, only 5 of your topics. You can choose whichever is the most important, but I don't like this limiting because there are people that have more than one topic and they shouldn't be limited to just the 3 minutes. So again, let's have some discussion on these things.
Before we continue discussion, since we do have a motion on the floor, I guess we need to decide if that's going to die or if it's going to get a second before we can have discussion.
We've got a second on it.
Is that Councilmember Majors?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and Michelle, I'm sorry, here I go again. Michelle has a question.
So if we approve number 8, can we?
Oh, you cut out.
She's frozen.
We've lost you again, Michelle.
She's holding very, very still.
Since we have the second and the motion to accept number 8, do we want to take a vote on that and then go back to Councilmember Eason's discussion on the other item, number 5?
We can if we.
I think that's what Councilwoman Ty was getting to. If we vote on motion or vote on number 8, can we go back and vote on other? No,
I believe we can, since the way that came in, it was the motion first and then the second. So if we take care of that, then we can open up the discussion for the rest of the form.
Okay.
Are we okay, Corbin, to do that?
I was reading the form, trying to get to my mute button. Yeah, that would be an acceptable approach. I actually don't have any problem with you continuing the discussion right now if you want to. I mean, that's just up to the council's pleasure. So the Roberts rules, which again, you are not bound by, would just simply say one of you would call the question. So if that's what you want to do, then someone moves to call the question and you vote. Otherwise, you can continue the discussion.
Do we want to continue? Sorry, Joanne.
Well, I think it's cleaner to go ahead and consider the motion that we've got because it has different meaning than what I think Sam's is going to come in as. Michelle is back with her. Did you have a question, Michelle?
Well, I was hearing y'all, and I think Mayor Pro Tem McCabe asked the question that I was going to ask. So, and it was about, can we approve 8 and still talk about the other ones?
And Carvin said, okay, if you,
Yes.
if you heard that on the thing. Okay, let's call for, we have a motion and a second. Let's call for a vote relative to item 8 on the public participation form to require additional information as requested by Councilperson Priest.
Elaine, do you want to repeat everything since Michelle was kicked off? Do you want to repeat what you would like and what I seconded? So did you want, you're muted. Sorry.
I think she heard that, but my motion was that we accept item number 8 as it's printed there. And it was seconded by Ashley Majors.
Is that what you seconded to, Councilmember Majors?
Repeat it again. I'm sorry, there's been so much. Repeat
Okay,
it.
Councilmember Priest made a motion to accept number 8 as it is written on the draft public participation form that was in your packet, and I can read number 8. It was, no person may submit/read a written statement on behalf of another unless that person is present at said meeting and can confirm that it is their statement. If the person cannot attend the meeting, they are to contact the city secretary directly prior to said meeting to discuss their statement, and statement will only be read by the city secretary.
Then I don't think we really need a motion because we already have that in our form.
This is the draft form to add that wording. So that's what Councilmember Priest's motion is, to add that statement to the form.
Okay.
And I second.
Okay. So, Mayor, can I call for the vote?
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem McCabe?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Ty?
Aye.
Councilmember Priest?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now further discussion, Sam. What did we cut you out completely? Sam, did you have further discussion?
Joanne, I can't hear you worth a flip.
Well, I'm sorry.
About item number 5.
Okay, so what is it you're proposing? The 3 minutes be changed accordingly to what?
Could I get you to speak to the microphone? Every time you turn your head, I can't hear you.
Well, I'm trying, Sam. It's just not coming through. I can
Okay.
hear you fine. What is it you want?
On number 5, I have heard many times that someone will have multiple topics, but they're just limited to 3 minutes and they're not able to get everything they wanted across, because we used to have 5 minutes. Okay, and it was 5 minutes and it was per topic. We went down to 3, and I thought 3 was a reasonable reduction, but I don't like it being on a per topic basis. But then I heard discussion about, well, one person could have 10 topics at 3 minutes apiece, and then they could take the entire allocated 30 minutes and then make it so no one else could speak. So if you have multiple topics, you only get to do one at a time. And you make certain that everyone that has signed up gets an opportunity to speak. Then if there's additional time remaining, then you can come back to you and get your second, third, fourth, or fifth topic. But that everyone gets a chance to speak, but everyone also gets an equal chance to express their views on their topics.
Shannon, you want to address why we come up with 3 minutes?
That was just the time that the council picked to try to condense the meeting because everybody's trying to get in here and get out within 2 to 3 hours. We limited it to 3 minutes, not per topic, but 3 minutes total. So it's whatever council's pleasure is to do.
Just as a little background too, before the legislature stepped in about 2 sessions ago, it actually was not even required that you have a public comment section. A lot of people mistakenly thought that was required, but it was not. And many cities actually did not have a public comment section at all. So the legislature stepped in and they changed and they said you must have a public comment section. And then they basically added to it that the city could impose reasonable rules to govern that presentation. So 3 minutes has been deemed by the Attorney General to be a reasonable time limit.
Thank you, Carvin.
And Carvin, it's the 3 minutes that that they have recommended. Is that per topic or per person, or?
It's generally limited per person for the very reason that Sam has mentioned. Certainly in larger cities where you have an audience of 30 or 40 people, if you give every one of them even 6 minutes, you have taken a lot of the council's time, and the idea of allowing them to come back and speak a second time, it's very difficult to manage. So most cities, in my experience, will pick a time, 3 to 5 minutes. You get up, you make your presentation on whatever you want to, and then you sit down, and that's your presentation for that meeting.
Okay, Michelle?
Okay, so if you have a citizen presentation and there's somebody in the audience that doesn't want to get up to speak, but they're speaking on their behalf, that's also part of their 3 minutes. That's not a separate topic. If it's another person, I would think that it would be another, okay, well, here's another 3 minutes because it's that person that's kind of speaking through this citizen that's presenting.
That's correct. Each person gets their own allotment of time, and they can use it however they want to, either on behalf of themselves or on behalf of somebody else. Now, sometimes cities will also impose a requirement that if there's, say, a homeowners association there and they have 40 members that all want to say the same thing, that they're opposed to ordinance number 3, that you will require them to designate a spokesperson to speak on behalf of that group. You get all of the names of the folks that agree with that speaker, and their names are put into the record, and then you give that spokesperson maybe double the normal time and allow them to make a presentation, say, on behalf of that entire homeowners association. But again, these are larger cities that might have a bigger audience than we normally do. We'll see what happens when we come back from the pandemic.
And to stop that confusion, even if they're in the audience and they wanted to have somebody else speak for them, I could read that person's statement. And when I read somebody's statement, I do time myself as well. I only give myself 3 minutes. So then that person that wanted to talk on their own, they have their 3 minutes to talk.
Okay, so you can do it on behalf of the citizen and they would still get their 3 minutes instead of having to split it up.
Correct. Between the two of them, yes.
Okay.
Ashley?
Sorry, someone's speaking. I think 3 minutes, allotted 3 minutes per topic for 3 minutes across the board, I think is sufficient, because if not, we'll be here all evening. Michelle, to your point, there was a situation that was on Moore Street, and I, for instance, got up and spoke for a few neighbors, and we were opposed to a situation that was going to take place, and I got up and spoke for them. And then a few of them also had like opposed signs, so to the city council. So it does happen, and you do time yourself. So it, like Carvin said, that's, most of the citizens today do time themselves before they even speak to us that I know of. But I think we need to keep it at 3 minutes for if we have 10 topics they want to speak on, because I mean, our meetings go to 7 hours, or even right now, if it's 4 hours, I don't even look at the time, but we do not need to allot 3 minutes per topic, because I like to speak. And if I saw that I had 5 agenda items and I got 3 minutes, well, hello, I'll make sure to speak on each one of them. So, and I know there are some other citizens that are just like me if I wasn't on council. So I make a motion that we keep the 3 minutes and keep it the same. As number 5, all presentations by the public are limited to no more than 3 minutes total, not per topic. So I make a motion that we keep it the same. So.
And, okay, Sam's got his hand up. Did you want to vote on the motion? Or?
No, I want to continue discussion.
Okay.
I believe we used to have in our agenda form some boilerplate that said that the citizen presentation period would be limited to 30 minutes. I was just looking at it, and it's not currently there, but it had some
It
things.
was never there, Councilmember Eason. It just when a previous council wanted estimated times.
Okay, fair enough.
That's where it was. That's where you saw the 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then we changed it to estimated time varies because we weren't limiting it to 30 minutes.
Hey, it's 10 o'clock. Can we vote on this? If anybody wants to second it, and then we got
meet twice a month.
Yeah, and it's 10:05. We don't need to be here past 9 o'clock. We have delayed this one and delayed this one. What else do you have to offer, Sam?
I'm saying we could still have 3 minutes per topic, but then we could have a total limit of 30 minutes for the public presentation period, so that we do not go over 30 minutes.
Well, that would require Shannon to be very mathematical.
I think Shannon can tell time just fine.
I have a motion that we keep it the same. Does anybody want to second me? I mean, I guess, Michelle, do you have?
No, do we have to make a motion if it's staying the same? I don't.
That one, I guess, or someone, Cynthia or Shannon, do we need to make a motion? I want to keep it the same. I don't know. I just want to keep this meeting going so we can.
You have a motion on the floor and you never got a second, but you guys continued discussing. So
up to the mayor to go ahead and declare the motion died for lack of a second. It's her discretion, and then go on and see if there's another motion.
Do we have to make, if it's keeping it the same, do we need to do anything with it?
Well, that would require a tabling if the council desires to table it to go on to the next item.
Okay. Does anybody want to second me? I guess not.
So I guess we're going to die for lack of a second. And because of time constraints, let's move on to item M. Discussion and necessary action regarding administration weekly reports. Ashley, that's yours.
Yes, sorry, I have to get my notes. Okay, briefly, I'm not going to go into full detail. This one is, I'll make it short and sweet. This one is just for Cynthia's reports on Friday, for staff reports. And as everyone knows, you can say that she's overworked, but we're not getting her Friday reports on Fridays. And I don't know if we need to move them to Mondays, but out of the 5 months, we're 7 times we have received them on different days. One of them was 4 days late. One day it was on a Sunday before a holiday. It's just, I think that we should either shorten them, give some duties if it's the bank statements, have the mayor send it out, since she does the signing the checks, alleviating some of the stress off of her. But Cynthia, I know you're looking a little crazy at me, but before I finish, but I think, hold on.
You mentioned bank statements, so I didn't know what you were.
The reports or something. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes. I'm just trying to keep it short and sweet. Sorry, I didn't pull them over here. But I think just not receiving them on Friday, on Saturday, just something to alleviate for you sending them on Friday, then, or if it's something that can help you to where you're not sending them out on Saturday or on Sunday or Friday. And I didn't have the time, so I don't have them right now in front of me, where you're not sending them out on Fridays at 7:00 p.m. to help you out. So if there's anything that we can do to take that off of you, if it's a burden or if it's something, that's all I wanted to see. Or if the mayor can do one of the duties, whatever things may be, or move it to Monday. That's all I wanted. So if Michelle or Josh, what, you have anything to say?
I think Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem McCabe had his hand up first out of everybody.
Do you think? Okay, Josh.
You're muted.
Cynthia, real quick before I go, did we ever set a date on when you had to have those to us?
No.
No. Okay. So there is no law stating that Cynthia or our administrator has to provide weekly reports. That was just a staff direction from the city council, and that was us asking her to provide those. We never agreed on a date that they had to be to us. We never agreed on a time that they had to be to us. They're simply weekly reports. So she works more than 40 hours. She works more than 60 hours a week. That's what comes with a salary job and the position that she does sometimes. So if she gets this to us in a week, I am perfectly fine with that, because we don't know what she might be working on at 6 o'clock on a Friday night that might need to be included in that report. I know I'm not going to be reading that report at 7 o'clock on a Friday night though, so I'll read it the next morning or sometime that weekend. So I'm perfectly fine with the way this is doing. I would like to make a motion now that we keep this the same and move on.
Okay, before we go, we've got two people. Michelle has comments and so does Sam.
I make a motion to move for a vote for Robert's rules.
Well,
Okay,
actually,
Councilmember
we don't have a
Easton is
second yet on the first motion, so we need
We
a
do,
second.
but Mr.
Councilmember
Easton is seconding.
Easton just seconded.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who did the second?
Councilmember Easton.
Oh, and I thought he was wanting to talk. I apologize.
I think he was going to talk earlier, but since we had this discussion, he put it into a second.
Okay, so we have to vote before we hear what Michelle's going to say.
No, we can have a little bit more discussion. We have our motion.
For Robert's rules, I called for a vote.
You're just, I was just trying to help her out because she's overworked, but that's all I was trying to do, to take some off of it instead of her sending it out on a Friday.
We're not discussing this anymore. It's been called for a vote.
Sure. Josh, I don't believe we even need a vote because it's nothing that we're changing that's in writing. Am I correct, Harvin?
Well, the way this needs to work is Josh needs a second on his motion, and then you vote on the motion to call the question. And if that passes by a majority, then you have to immediately vote on the motion that's on the floor. If Josh's motion doesn't pass, then you can continue with discussion.
Okay, but do we actually need a vote?
You do need a vote if Josh's motion can be seconded, but I haven't heard a second on his.
It was seconded by Councilmember Easton.
Seconded, yeah,
So there is a procedural motion on the floor that must be voted on first before any further discussion.
Okay, and then Josh, restate after all this what your motion actually was.
He's calling the question, and it's just an up or down vote as to whether or not we're going to vote on the preceding motion.
Okay, that's
So
confusing.
It takes two votes to get us there, but the first vote is just a yes or no, whether you're ready to vote or not. And then if you say yes, then you just cut off discussion and you vote on the preceding motion.
Okay, I learn something every meeting. Okay, we've got a motion and a second that we move on to the next motion, and Shannon call for a vote.
Okay, this is the vote for calling the question if we're ready to move on the motion. Councilmember McCabe.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Ty.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Priest.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. So now we're going to take the roll call votes for the motion to keep the weekly reports same as they're currently being done. Mayor Pro Tem McCabe.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, Councilmember Ty.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Priest.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Eason.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Majors.
Nay. Sorry. I tried to help you.
Motion carries 4-1. Now we can move on to the next agenda item, which I think is the executive session, Mayor.
It is. And do y'all guys want to go straight to executive session and get this meeting over with, or do you need a break?
Nope. Let's get this over with.
Okay, so we will now adjourn from our regular meeting. It is 10:15 p.m. We will resume in executive session in less than 5 minutes.